Hey guys and welcome back to my channel. This is part 1 of What If Minato was the Ashikabi of Thunder and Lightning. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and also go and support the author, link in description. MBIHQ, Tito Tower. Sekirei Adjustment Section. Sekirei number 11, Hikari, was sitting upright on an examination table while she watched Sahashi Takami, the head of the Sekirei clan, finish examining her twin sister, Sekirei number 12, Hibiki. At long last. Hikari was very impatient. She wanted to get out of the damn tower and find the man that she and her sister had been reacting to for a while now and wing themselves on him, not sit on their asses like a pair of idiots while they were given a final check-up before being released. Being almost identical twins made the two sisters fairly hard to tell apart. Hikari was the one who generally stood out more with her significantly larger bust, but Hibiki maintained that she had a better ass than her older twin did. Their personalities were different as well. Hibiki was calm and composed, while Hikari was short-tempered and impulsive. Other than those minor details, they were exactly identical. Tall and slender young women with long black hair tied into two ponytails and with light hazel eyes. They loved each other dearly and had sworn to have the same Ashikabi so as to not be separated from one another. Luckily enough, they had both reacted to the same Ashikabi, a man by the name of Seo Kaoru. He was handsome and seemed to be a nice guy. Just about the only thing that troubled the sisters about him was how weak their reaction to him was. From everything they had been told, reacting to an Ashikabi should instantly draw them to the person they were reacting to, like a moth to a flame. With Seo, it was more like a gentle tug to draw their attention. Well then, number 11, number 12. Takami said as she finished writing down Hibiki's results on her clipboard, "You are both in the pink of health." Good. Hikari snapped, "Now can we please have some clothes?" She gestured down at the thin plastic hospital gown that she and her sister wore. Not only was it unflattering, but it didn't have a back to it. The raven-haired Sekirei had to wonder what kind of perverted human had designed these things. Ah yes. Of course. The woman nodded and took out her phone. Sahashi Takami had ash-gray hair and slate-gray eyes and she wore jeans, a light pink shirt and a white lab coat. For a woman who was almost 40, she was still just as attractive as when she was younger. Eneng. Before the doctor could punch in the full number of the Sekirei clothing outfitting department, her phone began to ring. With a sigh, Takami regarded the caller ID and gestured for the two sisters to be quiet and not speak. The twins nodded in agreement, so Takami answered the phone and put it to her ear. Min-chan. What's up? Takami asked with a hint of a smile on her face. You don't usually call at this time. She listened for a moment to whoever was on the other end of the phone before a frown crossed her face and a dangerous glint entered her eye. He did it again. She hissed. After the warning I gave him last time, he ended up in hospital. Is he stupid or something? No, don't answer that. Takami listened again, the frown on her face deepening as she paced back and forth across the length of the room and made the occasional noise to indicate that she was listening. Apparently, she had gotten an idea, as her eyes shifted and locked onto the twins, who were trying and failing to look as though they weren't listening in. The gray-haired woman then grinned evilly, making the twins wonder what she was plotting and how it would affect them. Min-chan, don't worry. She told the person on the phone, I have a plan in the works. I'll be sending a couple of people around to educate your landlord. They'll then take you to a special hospital I have some influence at. I can't get away from work until the afternoon, so I'll meet you there, okay? Sit tight and try not to move your arm, got it? Good. See you later, Min-chan. She ended the call and stared at the phone for a moment. Doctor, who is that? Hibiki asked curiously. Takami looked at her with a small smile and said, that was my son, Minato. He needs help and I would like to ask a favor of you two in order to give it to him. The twins were both curious and wary simultaneously. You see, Minato is applying to Shinto Tito University and is in the middle of preparations for his second attempt at the entrance exam. Takami explained once she had caught their attention. Unfortunately, last year, despite all my efforts to conceal the fact, Minato's landlord, Indori Takuya, discovered the fact that I am a high-level member of MBI and started putting pressure on my son for more rent money than he could afford as a prep student. How much? Hikari asked. Ju-man en, 100,000 yen per week. Takami replied in disgust, for a pathetic little six-mat room. The twins gaped in shock. They had been taught the basics of economics just in case they were unwinged for an extended period of time, so they knew the average price for such a small room and it was nothing close to that amount. Moreover, most rented flats and apartments were paid monthly, not weekly. Was he trying to evict your son or what? Hibiki asked in bemusement. Probably. Takami replied with a shrug, Indori has a grudge against MBI. I don't know what it is and I don't really care. In the end, Minato managed 2 weeks for payments by emptying his savings, but couldn't make the third week. Indori got pissed and broke Minato's right arm, the same day that he was supposed to sit his entrance exam. The sisters noticed that her hands were clenched into fists and that an angry flame was lit in her eyes. They silently promised themselves not to get on this woman's bad side. Because of that, Minato wasn't able to take the exam and was forced to become a Ronin, unemployed secondary school graduate. Takami said grimly, when I found out, I had him admitted to an MBI-controlled hospital and personally went to have a discussion with Indori-san, during which I made it perfectly clear that a recurrence of such actions would result in a far more severe discussion than getting kicked around by me. As you heard just now, he has evidently recovered his courage. While this is interesting, doctor, what do you want us to do about it? Hikari asked bluntly. Indori-san has broken Minato's left arm this time and has evicted him, or tried to at least. Takami replied, he demanded more money. Min-chan refused to hand any over, barring the amount agreed upon in the lease. The man sounds like a slimeball. Hibiki muttered. He is. Takami confirmed, as I told Min-chan, I can't get away from work until this afternoon. Number 88 needs a last-minute adjustment before she can be released, so I'd like to ask you two to act in my stead. Huh. The twins yelped simultaneously. By that, I mean I'd like you two to beat the snot out of the fat bastard who dared to attack my son again, then take Minato to the MBI hospital. Takami said with a grin, you'd be free to find your Ashikabi after that. What's in it for us? Hikari asked. The high chance that you will both react to Minato, of course. Takami replied. But, Hibiki said with a frown, we're already reacting to someone. So, just because you've reacted to one person doesn't mean that you can't react to someone else. Takami replied, and, while I hate to admit that Manaka Baka has a point with anything, Minato is almost guaranteed to be a strong Ashikabi because he's my son. What do you have to do with your son being an Ashikabi? Hikari pointed out. I'm an Ashikabi as well. Takami replied, I was with Manaka when he discovered the ship and was let in, so I am an Ashikabi. Min-chan is highly likely to be an incredibly strong one as well. I really would prefer it if he wasn't involved in this stupid game of Manaka's. As long as he's in Shinto Tito, he will become an Ashikabi. I might as well make sure his first Sekirei are good ones. Hikari leapt to her feet with small tendrils of lightning arcing across her body and glared at Takami. We're reacting to Seo. She growled, we don't want another Ashikabi. The gray-haired woman's eyes narrowed at the rabbinette. Seo. As in Seo Kaoru. So what if it is? Hikari said defiantly. How he manages to give me a headache when he isn't even here is amazing. Takami grumbled, the one and only reason Seo isn't in prison right now is because he knows too many secrets about MBI. He is being fired as we speak and Manaka has issued a directive that any Sekirei that gets winged by him has their MBI cards cancelled. WY. Hibiki yelped. He's been working against MBI ever since Takehito died. Takami replied, gathering dirt on MBI, embezzling company money, defying Manaka, the list goes on. He'd be a terrible Ashikabi, not the least because of his laziness and the immense gambling debts he has. The twin Sekirei known as the Raiden Fudogo Thunder and Lightning twins exchange a look that might as well be an entire conversation thanks to their twin bond. Finally, Hibiki turned to Takami. Are you certain that we can react to someone other than Seo? She asked. Yep. The head of the Sekirei clan replied. Just like humans can fall in love with different people, so too can Sekirei react to different people. Just for curiosity's sake, how strongly have you both been reacting to Seo when he came within, say, a foot or so from you? Barely a small tug. Hibiki replied quietly, no warmth, no desire, just a small tug. Seo, at one point in his life, was probably a good match for the two of you. Takami said, with every visible sign of reluctance. Now though, that potential is mostly gone, which would explain why you only feel a small reaction towards him. This seemed to make Hibiki and Hikari think for a moment before the younger sister cocked her head to one side slightly. Why us? She asked. Why ask us to be your son Sekirei? His first Sekirei. Tamaki corrected her with a smile. A number of reasons actually. You were both adjusted by Takehito, so there isn't any chance of you having less power than the standard he set, thus you'll be able to protect him well. You're both street smart and quick on the uptake, so you'll be able to adjust rather quickly to the capital. Above all, you two are genetically identical, so if one of you reacts, chances are that the other one will as well, so Min-chan gets a 2 for the price of 1 deal. We don't want other Sekirei with whoever wings us. Hikari said moodily. The more Sekirei an individual Ashikabi has, the better their chances of surviving to the end of all 6 stages of the Sekirei plan. Takami replied, her voice hard and unrelenting at this point, I assume you remember what happens to Sekirei if their Ashikabi dies. The sisters flinch at the reminder. The thought of their Ashikabi whoever it ended up being dying was bad enough. The fact that that person's death would, in turn, kill all Sekirei winged by that Ashikabi was enough to make Hikari and Hibiki move closer to each other, just to make sure that the other was still there. Takami's expression softened. Look, I know that you want your Ashikabi to yourselves, but a good Ashikabi will be able to make time for all of you. This is all presuming that we react to your son in the first place. Hibiki pointed out. The human woman shrugged. If you do, you do. If you don't, you don't. It's worth a shot at the very least, wouldn't you agree? The twins looked at each other and held another silent conversation with each other for a moment. Then, as one, they looked at Tamaki. We'll do it, they said as one. 1 half hour later. Sahashi Minato's rented room. The young man cradling his arm inside the small, spartanly decorated room was, at first glance, unremarkable. He was good-looking, in an ordinary way. He was slightly too thin, which when combined with his average height, made him look somewhat waif-like. His black hair and slate-gray eyes, inherited from his mother, gave him a laid-back appearance. All in all, he was someone that one would look at in the street and then move away from. Thoroughly average and thus easily overlooked. Well Minato, you've really put your foot in it this time. He mused aloud. He should have just given the man the money he demanded when he asked, then contacted his mother later and told her what had happened and let her sort the idiot man out like she said she would. But no, he had to play the tough man, even though he wasn't one. And, once again, here he was with a broken arm right before the exams. Thankfully, it wasn't his writing arm this time, so he could hopefully take his entrance exam properly this time, if Indori-san didn't break his other arm as well, again. The sound of a car pulling up made Minato's head shoot up in hope. Maybe this was the promised help from his mother. Gingerly, he stood up, taking care not to jolt his arm as he did so, and shuffled to the room's sole window. Peering out, he gaped as he saw a goddamn limo sitting outside the small apartment complex. Standing right next to it was a pair of regal-looking girls dressed in jeans, trainers and t-shirts. Despite the fact they wore ordinary-looking clothes, it detracted nothing from how beautiful they were. Oh. Minato muttered. There was Indori-san running out to shout at them. He hated rich people. The small fat man also hated poor people, old samurai families, businessmen, shopkeepers, children, the elderly and pretty much anyone who isn't Indori-san himself. Indori, who had a flat, bald and square head that greatly resembled a misshapen potato, was barely 5 feet tall. He wore loose trousers and a string vest that did absolutely nothing to hide his distended and rarely washed belly as he waddled out shouting at the girls, one arm being shaken furiously at them in anger. The looks of revulsion on their faces was enough to tell Minato that not only could they see Indori-san, they could smell him as well. The scent of overcooked garlic often accompanied Indori-san. The girls, who almost had to be twins given how they were virtually identical to one another, pointed their hands at Indori-san, and blasted him with purple electricity. What the? Minato breathed in shock. Indori-san was flung back several meters, landing with a crash on the ground. He wasn't dead, despite the smoke that rose off of him. His limbs twitched spasmodically before stilling as he fell into unconsciousness. The two girls gave each other a high five before looking around. One of them pointed at Minato's room and they both started walking to the stairs. He just hoped the two weren't going to zap him as well. Hikari's perspective. Ugh, that sack of meat smelled awful before we zapped him. Hibiki said with her delicate nose wrinkled daintily, now he smells worse. Let's get the kid and get out of here. Hikari replied as she stalked towards the stairs. Takami had told them which room Minato was currently renting, a status that would not last any longer than it took the lawyers Takami had hired to file charges against one Indori Takuya. Aggravated assault, attempted entrapment, ABH, actual bodily harm, and breach of contract would sort him out fairly quickly. The elder twin was still full of doubts about this. A part of her was still loyal to Seo, damn whatever the older human had told her about him. She also doubted that a 19-year-old boy could make her react in a greater way than Seo, a grown man, could. Hibiki, the calmer twin, was more accepting of Takami's words than her tempestuous elder sister, but even she held her doubts that Minato could make one of them react, never mind both of them. She simply knew better than to voice them aloud like Hikari did. What puzzled both twins though was the secret little smile that Takami had given them when Hikari had voiced their doubts. Almost as if she knew something that they didn't. It was infuriating that she had bustled around, gotten them clothes, given them the location of her son's apartment and then waved them off, all the while wearing that irritating little smile. What's that odd feeling in the air? Hikari asked suddenly, pausing at the foot of the stairs. Hibiki paused as well. Her sister was right, there was an odd feeling in the air, almost a physical presence, but oddly, not. If the twins had been forced to describe it, they would have said it was like being near a large bonfire. Close enough to feel, but not close enough to actually warm up. Nei-chan, you don't think? Hibiki asked quietly. It can't be. The elder twin refuted incredulously, we couldn't even feel Seo unless he was within a foot of us. There's no way a boy could be so strong that we can feel him from a few meters away. Still, this is, more than I have ever felt with Seo. Hibiki said softly, even touching him didn't make me this, warm, inside. I think we should see how it is when we come to within a foot of him, but I am already convinced that this is a good idea. How? Hikari asked her sister in astonishment. For a while at least, we will have him to ourselves, which means we will be his first Sekirei. Hibiki replied, we'll be able to influence which Sekirei he wings and hold his highest confidence. I know we wanted to only have each other as our Ashikabi's Sekirei, but once we wing ourselves on him and emerge, his power will become like a Sekirei magnet. Hikari found herself unable to voice any words of protest against any of her younger twins' points. It was true that, with every Sekirei and Ashikabi wings, that Ashikabi's power will increase accordingly, more so if the Sekirei that are winged are both willing and reacting to the Ashikabi. The sheer amount of power that she was sensing would make sense if the Sekirei plan was in the second stage, but the first stage had only just begun. Takami-sensei must have had children with another Ashikabi. There's no other explanation for this ridiculous level of power. Hibiki considered as she and her sister slowly climbed the steps to Minato's room, the feeling of heat and power growing more and more with every step. I've never heard of a selective breeding program in humans for the Sekirei plan, and Takami-sensei definitely doesn't strike me as the kind of person who would have children for such a reason. Maybe it is just a coincidence. She shook her head in an almost unperceivable way. It actually didn't matter whether it was intentional or a pure coincidence. The end result was that, standing outside the door of Takami's son's rented room, she and her sister were barely able to stand from the feeling of power that they could sense from within the room. Shakily, Hikari banged twice on the door. Sahashi Minato. Your mother sent us to take you to hospital. Get out here. Hikari. Hibiki scolded her. Shush it you. Hikari barked back. The creak of the door opening drew the sisters from their argument. The cautious way that he regarded the both of them told the twins he had been watching out of his window when they had educated his landlord. Hi. He said with a nod of his head, thanks for doing this. The wince that accompanied this wasn't lost on the two Sekirei. Hibiki took charge. What part of your arm is broken? She asked. My forearm. Minato winced. Not my brightest idea. Let's see. Hibiki gently touched the arm in question. Yep. A surprisingly clean break by the looks of it. Let's get you to the hospital so we can get you sorted. Right. He nodded. Should I bring my stuff, or should that wait until later? Bring it. Hikari said shortly. She was exercising all of her considerable self-control so as not to accidentally injure the boy further by gabbing him and winging herself on him. Although the vitality boost would help him, it might also make his arm set at an awkward angle, meaning it would have to be re-broken and reset. As Minato turned around to grab his bag, Hibiki threw a knowing look at her sister before grabbing the bag from the boy who would very shortly become their Ashikabi, citing that he shouldn't put stress on an injured body. Hikari just huffed. She knew that Hibiki was feeling the exact same thing that she was probably even more so because she'd come into skin-to-skin contact with him, yet she wasn't showing any signs of discomfort or desire. She always was better at controlling herself than me, the eldest twin bemoaned in mild irritation. Wow. Minato looked at Hibiki in a mix of awe and respect. You're pretty strong. She had a rucksack on her back and 2 suitcases in her hands, which were presumably full of the young Ronin's clothes and other things. I'm somewhat stronger than the norm, Minato-san. Hibiki replied demurely. Now, we should be moving. That broken bone won't heal itself. Limo, en route to MBI hospital. The silence in the back of the limousine was more than slightly uncomfortable for Hikari and Hibiki, for multiple reasons. For one, they wanted to wing themselves on their Ashikabi, who was sitting not a foot away from them. For another, Sahashi Minato was eyeing them warily. Obviously, he was still a bit wary of the pair of them after watching them blast his former landlord with purple electricity. Deciding that an attempt to break the ice had to be made, Hibiki cleared her throat. Minato-san, is your arm all right? She asked. Oh, yeah. Minato nodded. It's just throbbing dully right now. I guess breaking my other arm last year hurt so much because it was the first bone I'd ever had broken. This is bearable, if barely. Did the pig ever say why he's trying to extort so much money out of you? Hikari asked abruptly. Indori-san used to own a lot of apartment buildings all over Shinto-Tito. Minato replied hesitantly. MBI used bylaws and health and safety laws to have most of them closed up by the government. Those that weren't closed by those laws, Indori-san had to fix them up, which pretty much bankrupted him. He had to sell them off until the building back there was the only one he had left. So he's bitter and he tried to get his money back by extorting you. Hibiki sounded disgusted. What a pathetic excuse for a human. I wish I could argue otherwise, but my arms would beg to disagree. Minato said with a wry smile that had the twins subtly rubbing their thighs together. So, can I have your names? He continued with a moment's pause. Sorry about that. Hibiki felt like an idiot. They hadn't even introduced themselves to their almost definite Ashikabi. I am Sekirei number 12, Hibiki. And this is my Oni-san, Sekirei number 11, Hikari. Sekirei. Minato asked in confusion. We are, to put it simply, aliens. Hikari said shortly. Well, alien, for a given value of the word, barring numbers 00 to 09, we were all just eggs when we crash-landed on Earth. We aren't human though, that much is true. There are 108 of us, not including number 00. Hibiki explained. The higher the number, the older and more powerful the Sekirei. The single numbers are many times more powerful than most of the rest of us. All of us possess enhanced strength, stamina and endurance compared to a human. Some of us have the ability to control the elements. You saw my sister and I use our element back there. Electricity. Minato nodded. We prefer to think of it as lightning. Hikari said grumpily, but yes. Unfortunately, my sister and I need to touch one another in order to use our power, so we need to have the same Ashikabi. Ashikabi. One of the things that make us different from humans, powers aside, is our ability to select our mates. Hibiki blushed slightly as she got to the root of the matter. On a purely genetic level, we are perfectly compatible with humans and can have children with them. On a spiritual and physical level, we react to someone who is a match for us. The higher the compatibility, the more powerful the reaction. For a Sekirei, we only have one mate, for the rest of our lives. By kissing our chosen Ashikabi, we wing ourselves on them. Hikari continued, by doing so, we bind ourselves to the Ashikabi, mind, body and spirit. From that moment on, we can never even consider touching another Ashikabi in a romantic fashion. Are there many Ashikabi? Minato found himself asking. More than you might think. Hibiki replied, humans are very genetically compatible with Sekirei and vice versa. The ratio of Ashikabi to Sekirei is at least 3:1, according to MBI. Wow. So, have you found your Ashikabi yet? Minato asked as he took this all in. We thought that we had. Hikari said slowly, but we've started reacting a different Ashikabi. Is that possible? Minato seemed taken aback. We though it wasn't possible ourselves. Hibiki said smoothly, but apparently, we can react to multiple Ashikabi. To go by nature's laws, we should choose the Ashikabi who we have the strongest reaction to, and our reaction to the first one was, well, to put it bluntly, the first person is like a lit match. The new person we're reacting to is like a blazing bonfire by comparison. There's such a large difference. Minato asked curiously. Pretty much. Hikari said with a shrug that did interesting things to her cleavage, making Minato flush red as his eyes automatically followed her movement before he forced himself to look away. Hikari was a little smug that she had made him react like that. Obviously physical compatibility wasn't going to be a problem. She had noticed him sneaking glances at Hibiki as well, so this was all good. Of course, we wouldn't wing ourselves on someone we didn't like, regardless of how much we reacted to him, but since we've met him, I think we can safely say that that isn't an issue. Wouldn't you say so, Hibiki? Hikari said with a small smile at Minato. I agree, Nei-san. Hibiki said wearing a matching smile. Minato was completely inexperienced when it came to the nuances of the fairer sex. His mother and little sister were not the typical examples of females, both of them being capable of beating up groups of thugs with absolute certainty, as well as being domineering, stubborn and hard-headed. He did, however, have a fairly intelligent mind and a sharp intuition. Therefore, the fact that the two of them looked at him in a hungry way as they said that made 2 and 2 add up in his mind. Correct me if I'm wrong, Minato said hesitantly, but, by any chance are you reacting to me? The twins' eyes widened slightly as he said that. Takami had warned them that he was sharp, but this was surprising. She had also warned them that he was as dense as concrete when it came to insinuations, so they had been using some pretty obvious ones, but he had picked up on them pretty quickly. As a matter of fact, yes. Hibiki said carefully, it is currently taking all of our self-control to not wing ourselves on you as we speak. But, I'm no one special. Minato protested, I'm just me. An Ashikabi's origin has no bearing on their power, Minato-san. Hikari said pointedly, what does is their genetics, and you have at least one Ashikabi parent, Takami-san. My mother's an Ashikabi. The surprise on his face was very obvious, but then, why didn't you react to her? Because, while we may be bisexual, we prefer men over women. Hibiki said, yes, sexual orientation, on both sides, has an influence on whether we react or not to an Ashikabi. Most Sekirei are women who are bisexual, but strongly favor men. A few out-and-out lesbians, but most of us would prefer the touch of a man rather than the touch of a woman. There are only a few guys and most of them are straight as well. Minato wasn't surprised by most of this information. It would make sense that the preferences of both parties would be taken into account when you were talking about a species that mated for life. I have to say that the fact you made both of us react took me by surprise. Hikari added, I mean seriously, the only other person to make us react in even a small way was a fully grown man, so we. You, not we. Hibiki put in, you were disbelieving that a kid, no offense, Minato-san could possibly make one of us react, let alone both of us. And look at us now. All he'd have to do is crook his finger once and we'd be winged. Yeah. Hikari grumbled, rub it and why don't you? I plan on it, Hai-chan. Hibiki smirked, using her old nickname for her elder twin. Hikari slumped. Great. Minato grinned a bit at the interplay between the sisters before he became serious again. This is a lot to take in. Do you mind if I talk to my mother before we settle anything? Of course. Hibiki nodded. Just remember something. We only have so much willpower and that is greatly helped by the fact you are injured and we don't want to hurt you. Once the injury is healed however, that incitement will be gone and we will not be able to hold ourselves back for long. It takes months for a broken bone to mend though. Minato pointed out. Ah, but MBI has developed some interesting technologies for rapid healing, based off of technology found on the Sekirei mothership. Hikari replied knowingly, plus, when the doctors finish up their part, we can wing ourselves on you, which gives you a vitality boost, as well as speeding up your natural healing process. Okay, that sounds useful. Minato acknowledged, just let me think about it, okay. Sounds fair. With that, the sisters sat back on the limo seat and waited for the vehicle to arrive at the MBI hospital. Things were getting interesting. Afternoon. Adjustment Labs, MBI HQ, Tito Tower. Well now Musubi-chan, all of your vitals check out. Takami said. She was standing in front of a slender, but large-busted, bubbly young woman wearing a sketchy version of Amiko's outfit, as well as red gloves and black boots. She was practically vibrating on the spot with energy as she listened to Takami. Can I go out and find my Ashikabi-sama now, Takami-sensei? She asked eagerly. Yep. Takami wasn't surprised when that simple word made Musubi jump around like a kid on raw sugar in glee. Thank you, Takami-sensei. Musubi squealed in joy. Calmly does it, Musubi-chan. Takami smiled. As it so happens, the hospital you are to be released from is where my son is being treated, so we'll be making a quick detour to his room before you are released. Takami-sensei's son. Musubi tilted her head to the side cutely, is he okay? A broken arm. Takami had to restrain herself from glaring, as the Raiden sisters had more than likely zapped the man to within an inch of his life long before now, so she put it out of her mind. He's an Ashikabi so he's being treated at the MBI hospital. He's an Ashikabi-sama. Musubi's eyes lit up. Who is his Sekirei? Number 11 and number 12. Takami said as she led the excitable Sekirei to the garage, stopping off en route to grab the twins' MBI cards, as well as Musubi's card. Rather, he's going to be their Ashikabi. They doubted me, but if he doesn't make them react, I'll be very surprised. He does have a broken arm though, so they'll hold off until it's healed before pestering him to wing them. Why wouldn't he wing them in the first place? The brown-haired Sekirei asked as she frowned cutely. Likely, he wants to ask me if it's alright with me for him to wing them. Takami sighed. He's a good kid, but both I and his sister are fairly domineering. He hasn't had much in the way of confidence because we keep pushing our own opinions onto him. Hopefully getting the Raiden Futogo as his Sekirei will give him a bit of backbone, he'll need it. Why? Musubi asked as they got into a limo. Those two need a firm hand, otherwise they'll push him around. Takami replied, they'll be more subtle about it than me or Yukari would be, but it would happen nevertheless. Musubi doesn't really get it, but I'd like to meet your son. Musubi said with a smile, what's his name? Minato. Takami smiled internally. Hook, line and sinker. The two spent the trip to the hospital chatting about the Sekirei they both knew, which was quite a few. Osamu Takehito, the head of Sekirei adjustment, had died a few years ago, leaving the vast majority of the Sekirei unadjusted. Hiroto Manaka, the director of MBI, promptly dumped all of that responsibility onto Takami's shoulders. She was at least vaguely familiar with the Sekirei that passed through her hands, but a few stood out, like Musubi, because they were something special. Musubi had been one of the two Sekirei that had been kidnapped by a foreign nation, possibly America, and taken to an island for study. Manaka had ordered that the discipline squad be dispatched. Of the two members of the disciplinary squad dispatched, only one returned, with both Musubi and Kaho in tow. Takami-sensei, we're here. Musubi said excitably. Takami shook her head at herself for dwelling on memories as she acknowledged the bubbly Sekirei and stepped out of the limo. Walking through the hospital to the high-security Ashikabi section, the two were eyed furtively by all red-blooded males in the vicinity. I'm looking for Sahashi Minato. Takami said to the first nurse she came across in the Ashikabi section. Room 5. The nurse said. Are there any Ashikabi here other than him? Takami asked just to be safe. No ma'am. The two walked on, and Takami noticed that Musubi was becoming flushed and was also panting slightly. A small grin flashed across Takami's face at this. Either Minato had winged Hikari and Hibiki already or he was a far more powerful Ashikabi than even she had imagined. Takami-sensei, I feel hot. Musubi panted out. What's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you, Musubi-chan. Takami soothed her, you're just reacting to your Ashikabi. My Ashikabi. Musubi looked happy, in a slightly drunk way. Yep. Now, walk this way. Takami steered the tottering fist-type Sekirei towards Minato's room. Judging by this, she must have a really high compatibility with her son. She knocked on the door of room 5 and entered and was treated to the sight of Hikari and Hibiki practically anchoring themselves to their seats to stop themselves from jumping her son's bones. Takami, thank God. Hibiki gasped. Any trouble with Endori? She asked the twins. Fried the bastard. Hikari said tightly, now please talk to your son so he will wing us, please. And who's that? Musubi, number 88. Takami introduced the staggering Sekirei, who was staring at Minato, who was lying on the sole bed in the room and gazing at his arm in disbelief. Min-chan, I see the doctors have fixed you up nicely. Ka-san. Minato jerked his head up. Yeah, it's amazing. It actually only took a couple of hours to fix, the medicine here is amazing. It is rather. Takami agreed. Now, why in the name of sanity haven't you winged these girls? Holding themselves back isn't healthy for them, you know. You mean, it's alright with you? Minato asked in acute disbelief. That was actually the reason I sent them, rather than men in black suits. Takami explained, I knew that you'd be an Ashikabi because I'm one, so I decided to help you out with my first two daughters-in-law. Daughters-in-law. Minato spluttered, first two. Winging a Sekirei is the equivalent to having a marriage ceremony. Takami said in amusement, as to the last, why do you think Musubi here is staring at you like that? She's reacting to you as well. Seeing the surprised face on her son, she grinned. What, did you think that winging Hikari and Hibiki would be the end of it? No, the more Sekirei you wing, the more powerful your Ashikabi aura becomes, thus allowing you to wing more powerful Sekirei. Not that any of the Sekirei are weak, but there are some that stand head and shoulders above the others. The single numbers, right? Minato stated. Exactly. Takami nodded. There are powerful Sekirei outside the single numbers of course, but they are few and far between. Anyway, you have my blessing to get married to these three, so hurry up and wing them. By kissing them? Minato asked, as he blushed at the longing stares that the three Sekirei were giving him. Membrane-to-membrane contact via the lips. Takami said with an evil grin, or, to put it more plainly, a kiss on the lips. Minato flushed bright red. What did you expect? Takami was glorying in her son's discomfort. I did say it was like a wedding. You may now kiss the bride, get it? Or, brides, in this case, I suppose. Even if you say that, Minato had calmed down slightly, but he still looked like a tomato. Minato-san, the twins had snuck up on him while his mother had distracted him. Flanking him on both sides, they crawled onto the bed and approached him. Having two beautiful women crawl towards him like that made Minato's blush return full force. He also unconsciously leaned towards them. Takami grinned like a clown. Most people thought the whole winging phenomenon was something that only affected the Sekirei. Takehito had theorized that it could also affect the Ashikabi if the reaction, and thus the compatibility, between the Sekirei and Ashikabi in question was high enough. In this case, Minato was just as attracted to the Raiden Fudogo as they were to him, which caused his hidden instincts as an Ashikabi to subtly push him into winging them. What's going on? I feel hot, Minato thought dizzily. He could feel an aura of power in the air, drawing him closer to the girls. A part of him, the part that feared his mother, was trying to assert control and stop this from continuing. A larger part, the part that had defied her and chosen to come to the new capital to apply for Shinto Tito University, was having none of that and urged him to kiss them. Hell, his mother was encouraging this, so why not just go for it? His mind made up, Minato didn't resist when the lips of Hikari and Hibiki planted themselves on his own at exactly the same time. A pale purple glow played over the three before, from the Sekurice's backs, a pair of identical symbols emerged. It was of a Kateoku no Tori, one-winged bird presumably a wagtail, with a yin and yang beneath it, flanked on either side by two magatama. With a cry of what must be ecstasy, or possibly rapture, a pair of wings burst forth from both of the twins and spread across the room before fading into nothing once again. Wow, Minato breathed. That had to be one of the most amazing things he had ever seen. The twins cuddled into him and sighed in happiness. Our Ashikabi, from this day forth. Hikari muttered with a rare smile on her face. Let the heavens resound with our light and sound, until the end of time. Hibiki said happily. Takami was watching with a proud smile before she frowned. If Minato was as punctual about giving his usual introductory speech as he usually was, he ought to use the MBI network to show up any second now. Greetings, Sahashi Minato. Blared from the small TV at the foot of the bed, which it unilaterally turned itself on, the screen showing a gray-haired man wearing dark sunglasses, a white suit and an equally white high-collared cape. Right on schedule. Manaka, shut up will you? Takami growled as she stepped in front of the TV. Era, Takami-kun. Manaka wasn't surprised to see her there, which was irritating. He had probably been informed of everything she had said and done since this morning, the stalking voyeur. Checking up on your injured son. How very maternal of you. I trust your lawyer will prosecute Indori-san to the limits of the law for breaking Minato-kun's arm. Smug bastard. Takami thought as she replied, yes he will be. Now, I'll give the introduction to my son, if you don't mind. I suppose you'll be obdurate about this, won't you? Manaka asked rhetorically. Very well. As Minato-kun has no place of residence as of this moment, I will be sending Hikari and Hibiki's clothing to his hospital room. It should arrive shortly. And, is that number 88? Long time no see, Musubi-chan. It has been a while, Hakase, Professor. Musubi chirped faintly. She was kneeling on the floor, panting slightly. As it seems that Minato-kun will be adding you to his flock, momentarily, I'll have your clothes sent along as well. The director of MBI concluded, I must compliment you on your taste, Minato-kun. The Raiden Futogo and Musubi-chan in a single day. I look forward to seeing which Sekirei you wing next. Thank you. Minato didn't know how to respond to that last remark. It sounded like a compliment, with an underlying current of amusement at Minato's expense. Arigato, Hakase. Musubi called. Very well then. I must be off now, so Takami-kun, you make certain to tell Minato-kun all of the details of the Sekirei plan. Manaka said with an admonishing finger wag in Takami's direction, making the gray-haired woman snarl before executing a perfect heel drop kick on the TV. Beep 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 beep. Takami took out her phone and scowled at the message. The cost of replacing the TV is coming out of your paycheck, Takami-kun. Manaka. Cocky son of a bitch. Takami said lightly, now then. Daughters-in-law number 1 and number 2, kindly make way so Musubi-chan can emerge. Flushing at their new titles, the twins very reluctantly withdrew from their new Ashikabi and stood to one side while Musubi made her way to Minato. Judging by how shaky Musubi was, Takami guessed that adding 2 Sekirei at once had made Minato's Ashikabi, aura, skyrocket in strength. Mi Minato-san, Musubi barely made it to the bed before she collapsed. Minato automatically reached out and caught her before she hit the bed, his touch making the brown-haired Sekirei's heartbeat skyrocket. Minato wondered at how soft Musubi felt before she put her arms around his neck. Minato-san, I'm sorry that we don't know each other well, but I can't take it anymore. Musubi panted out before she darted in and softly pressed her lips to the man who was her Ashikabi. This time a soft, light pink aura played over the Sekirei and Ashikabi. Takami, sharp eyes locked onto where Musubi's Sekirei crest emerged from, saw the faint outline of another one underneath it, with a small silvery white aura around it as well. With a joyful cry of rapture, Musubi's pink wings sprouted from her crest, and the concealed crest also shot out small wings to signal that it too had been winged. Yumi, looks like even as a Sekirei Tama, you can still get an Ashikabi, thanks to Musubi, Takami thought with a smile as the wings of light faded. My Ashikabi-sama, Musubi snuggled into Minato, our fists are joined as one. Let them protect each other until the end of time. Phew, why is it so hot in here? Hikari muttered. Hibiki nodded. It's the backlash of Musubi's winging resonating down Minato's link to you both. Takami informed them both, your link with him seems to be very stable and strong, despite the short period of time that you have been winged. Must be because Min-chan's power is so powerful. I'll say. Hibiki said with a shiver, from a foot away, it was like we were standing next to magma. We had to be winged by him. It was all that we could think about. Fair enough. Takami grinned, well Musubi-chan, how do you feel? The best I've ever felt. The fist-type Sekirei replied dreamily, Minato-sama's power is amazing tilde. You'll gradually adjust to it until you're accustomed to it. Takami grinned again, now, off you get and sit in a chair. Min-chan has to be filled in about the Sekirei plan and having a cute wife like you draped all over him isn't going to help his concentration any. Pouting slightly, Musubi stood up and bowed slightly to Minato before sitting in one of the nearby chairs. The sisters sat next to her and nodded at her. Well then, where to begin? Takami mused as she grabbed the last free seat and sat in it. Well, I'm assuming Hikari and Hibiki filled you in a little on Sekirei in general. At Minato's cautious nod, Takami continued, well then, Sekirei 101. First off, grab these. She threw 3 cards at Minato, who caught them with slightly more grace than she'd expected. Not a bad catch, Min-chan. Those are special MBI Unlimited cards. An important fact about Sekirei is that they have a far larger appetite than a regular human does. A Sekirei-sized helping is about 3 times the size of a regular human-sized helping. These cards are to offset the food expense incurred, as well as for clothes and the like. And I have 3 of them. Minato shook his head in amazement. It'll help you buy a house. Takami said with a shrug. These are really unlimited. Minato checked. Pretty much. If not enough is being judged to be being spent on things for your Sekirei, they could be cancelled. Takami said with a thoughtful look on her face, I've cleared the whole house thing with accounting, so no problems there. I even have one picked out for you, a place in the northern area of the new capital. Wow, thanks Ka-san. Minato was stunned at this generosity. Only complication is, you'll have to share it with Yukari. Takami watched in amusement as her son paled at this. Yukari? Hibiki asked curiously. My daughter. Takami said with a shrug, she got accepted into Shindong Women's University just yesterday, although she doesn't know it yet. I'm going to make her live with you for the sake of safety. Oh yeah, Yukari's an Ashikabi as well, isn't she? Minato realized, wait, how'll I explain having 3 women living with me? Ah, that is tricky. Takami nodded sagely, you see, MBI has just begun something called the Sekirei Plan. Releasing all 108 Sekirei into Shinto Tito to look for their Ashikabi is the first stage. When 90% are winged, the plan moves to phase 2. Essentially, this is an immense survival tournament based in the capital. Secrecy is paramount and you aren't allowed to tell anyone not involved about it. If you do, yeah, just don't do that. Oh. Okay. Minato said slowly, what should I tell Yukari though? You know what she's like about girls with big busts. She still does that. Takami face palmed. Yep. Minato replied wryly. Anyo, what is it that she does? Musubi asked innocently. She grabs the breasts of any woman who has a bust bigger than herself. Takami said dryly, I'm not sure if it means she's bisexual or if she has breast envy. This means that Hikari and Musubi are almost certain to be victims. A human has bigger breasts than me, Hibiki muttered with a dark cloud hanging over her. Her bust is an 81. You are a 79. Takami said helpfully, the difference isn't that much. You look fine as you are, Hibiki. Minato added with a smile. Why you think so? Hibiki brightened up at this compliment from her Ashikabi. When he nodded in confirmation, Hibiki very visibly preened as she sat up straighter in her seat. Smooth. Takami said to her son, it helps that is what you think as well. Anyway, regarding Yukari. I think if you admit to being in a relationship with the twins here, she ought to buy it. It isn't a stretch to imagine that a pair of identical, same gender, twins would have similar tastes in men. It also has the novelty of being the truth. In Musubi, Minato asked a friend of the twins who needs a place to crash after moving to the new capital. Takami said promptly, also true. You're just omitting that the friendship is fairly new and that you have a relationship with her as well. That feels kinda wrong. Her son admitted, glancing at Musubi, she is my Sekirei as well. It isn't right I have to lie about the fact we're together as well. Minato-sama. Musubi was touched by this admission. If it is to help you, Musubi doesn't mind it. Takami looked proud of her son for admitting that excluding one of his wives from the relationship seemed wrong. That's the right attitude to take, Minato. It is only until she wings a Sekirei of her own, so don't worry about it. You can come clean to her about it. Even better, Musubi-chan, as a fist-type Sekirei, is more than capable of stopping Yukari from sticking her foot in your face. Yeah, that's a point. Minato's sweat dropped at that. Yukari could get very temperamental about people lying to her about pretty much anything. Her automatic reaction is to kick the subject of her ire into submission. Listen, I have to go now. Takami said as she stood and checked the clock. Here's the address of the realtor who has the house reserved for you. Give him this letter, then one of the twins' cards to pay for the house. She passed the letter and note to Hibiki, who tucked them into her pocket. Minato examined the MBI cards. Two had a pair of crossed lightning bolts in the bottom left corner. The one that was Musubi's had a clenched fist over a yin and yang symbol in the same place. Right. He nodded. Will the house have furniture? Takami blinked. No, I don't think so. You'll have to check the place out before going furniture shopping. Make sure you get a big bed for your wives. Ka-san. Minato yelped in embarrassment. Hikari and Hibiki flushed red as well. Musubi had a question mark floating over her head as she looked slightly bemused. Hey, you don't have to worry about them getting pregnant either. Takami continued, MBI gave them a drug before releasing them that prevents conception for about a year. If, by some miracle, the Sekirei plan continues for longer than a year, they'll be recalled to have the drug re-administered to them. Enjoy. With that, Takami made her way out of the door, smirking at the mortified expression on her son's face and the bright red faces of two of his other wives. Not to self. Sit down with Musubi to explain the facts of life to her. Takami thought idly as a pair of men in black suits carrying boxes walked past her. Other than that, Operation Embarrass Son to Death in front of his wives was a complete success. I wonder how long it'll be before I'm a grandmother. At the same time. Izumo Inn, northern area of Shintotito. Mia-tan. A tall redhead wearing glasses said as she popped her head into the kitchen of the inn. She wore what loosely resembled a cream-colored Chinese cheongsam. Matsu. The subject of the redhead's conversation, a purple-haired woman dressed in a white haori and purple hakama. The two were very beautiful, despite their casual attire. Sahashi Takami has manipulated her son into joining the Sekirei plan. Matsu said quickly, he's already winged numbers 11, 12 and 88. From what I was able to observe, he is an immensely powerful Ashikabi and with 3 Sekirei adding to that, he is a veritable Sekirei magnet. Did he forcibly wing them? Mia asked quietly. She had been chopping vegetables for sukiyaki and she unconsciously altered her grip on the knife as if she held a sword instead. No, that's it. He actually attracted them just by being near them. Matsu said in mild wonderment. Number 88 practically climaxed when he winged her, he's that powerful. I fail to see why this is a cause for concern, Matsu-chan. Mia replied as she relaxed her grip on the cooking knife, he may be powerful, but that has no bearing on whether he attracts more Sekirei, and as he winged them as a result of them reacting to him, it makes him a better Ashikabi, in my opinion. He's moving into our street. Matsu said. Mia paused. I beg your pardon. His mother contacted a realtor around about midday and placed a reservation on Matsuyama-tan's house that he put up for sale after he moved to live with his daughter in Hokkaido. Matsu babbled, referring to a house across the road and 2 houses down the street from Izumo Inn. He has the resources of 3 MBI VIP cards to buy and furnish the house. I like the look of him, Mia. He's going to attract me as soon as he walks down the street. What if MBI is doing this to draw me out? I remember Sahashi Takami quite well, Matsu-chan. Mia said quietly. She visited Takehito in the labs a couple of times. She always declared that she would try and keep her children out of the S-plan as it was called then if she could. The fact that she is instead actively aiding her son in gathering a flock of sekirei means that she ran out of options to prevent it from happening. She wouldn't do this otherwise, and she wouldn't let her son be used to create a secondary discipline squad. If his power calls to you, go to him. Don't let suspicion rend you alone, Matsu-chan. You deserve happiness with an Ashikabi. Mia-tan, Matsu said in surprise. Make sure you tell Uzume and Kagari as well. Mia said as she turned back to the chopping board. Knowing Kagari, he'll go off to his host club for a while rather than risk being winged by a man. Uzume-tan will probably leap at the chance. Matsu remarked. The only person she reacted to got transferred to a hospital in America the day after they met. As with you, if it is what she desires, she will go to him. Mia said calmly. If it is the will of the fate we call love, then it shall be so. Hi, Mia-tan. Matsu said quietly as she slipped out of the kitchen. It was moments like this that made the sekirei of wisdom's heart ache for sekirei number 0001, Asama Mia. She had lost her beloved husband and had mourned him ever since, locking out the possibility of being winged with sheer willpower. Although as the pillar of the sekirei, it was a big, what if, as to whether she could have been winged in the first place. The fate we call love, huh, Matsu whispered. She made for her secret room. She had research on one Sahashi Minato to do. With Minato and his flock. Minato stared at the door that his mother had just breezily exited from before shaking his head in familiar and fond exasperation. Sahashi Takami always said exactly what she wanted and thought, so he wasn't really all that surprised that she had said all of that, but he really wished that she hadn't said all of that in front of his sekirei wives. He flushed again at calling the three beautiful girls in his room his wives. Minato-sama. Musubi said cutely, why's your face red? Ah, no reason. Minato replied hastily. Now then, once your clothes have been delivered, we'll head out to the realtor and buy our new house before going to have a look at it. Sounds good. Hikari said with a nod. We should buy some regular clothes for Musubi on the way, cause her spare clothes will likely be copies of her outfit. Good point. Minato conceded. Don't you like my clothes? Musubi asked hesitantly. I do actually. He blushed at this. They look very cute on you. The thing is they make you stand out. Well, more than you already do. Hi. Musubi tilted her head in mild puzzlement. Musubi-chan, you are a very physically attractive girl. Minato said with a smile. So are Hikari and Hibiki. Even when wearing ordinary clothes as they're wearing right now, that fact cannot very well be hidden. It's like covering a statue with a sheet. You might be able to disguise the details of the statue, but you know that it is, in fact, a statue beneath the sheet. The three sekirei blushed at this compliment. Anyway, the point is that your clothes are good for combat, but make it obvious that you're a sekirei. Hibiki said, her face still flushed with pleasure, so we'll be buying you some regular human clothes to wear when we aren't expecting to fight someone. Think of them as a present from me. Minato added. The look of happiness on Musubi's face was a contrast to the swiftly hid jealousy on the twins' faces. I'll be buying clothes for you too as well. Minato said immediately, sensing that he might be in trouble with his other sekirei. That reminds me, what do your sekirei outfits look like? Bondage outfits. Hikari said with a flush, M1s to boot. Takami-sensei got us these so we didn't stand out. Wah. Minato squawked. Okay, now new clothes for you two have just been shifted to a priority. What the heck is MBI thinking, giving you those as regular clothes? Apparently, all our outfits are chosen by Chairman Manaka. Hibiki replied. Right, Minato shook his head at that, sheesh. Forcing people into outfits that aren't their kind of thing. The sisters exchanged a look, but a pair of muscle-bound men in black suits came in, dropped off a pair of boxes, one larger than the other, and stomped out. Well, now that we have your clothes, we can go. Minato stood up and stretched before grabbing one of the boxes. A few minutes later Minato, who wasn't carrying anything, and his three sekirei, who had insisted that they carry everything, stepped out of the hospital's private Ashikabi and sekirei-only entrance, where a car was waiting, thanks to his mother, the young Ashikabi guessed. Minato-san, Takami-sama has put me at your disposal for the duration of today. The driver said politely, where would you like to go first? A clothes shop first. Minato said hesitantly, my girls need more outfits. Hikari, Hibiki and Musubi preened a little at the possessive statement. They liked how it sounded. They were his and he was theirs. Only another Sekirei touching their crests could change that fact. As you wish. I shall pop the boot open so your luggage can be stored comfortably. The driver replied with a slight bow. Things are getting interesting. Hikari mused. This was Takami making a point to the other members of MBI about her son. That he has her full support and backing, so there, or something along those lines. She didn't really care. She and her sister were winged together by a powerful Ashikabi, who was also kind and caring. Anything else was dust in the wind as far as she could care. Izumo Inn. Sekirei number 10, Uzume, yawned as she strolled into the dining room of Izumo Inn. She had only just woken up from her regular 16-hour sleep and was ready for her 4 hours of activity. Uzume-chan, I believe you have been told about wandering the inn stark naked before, Mia said firmly, the demonic Hananya mask appearing above her head and leering down at the naked Sekirei. I wondered why it was so cool. Uzume muttered as she fled back to her room with cold sweat running down her face. That damn Hananya mask scared the crap out of her. Dressed in a tight-fitting t-shirt and jeans that did nothing whatsoever to hide her large shapely breasts and tight butt, Uzume once more entered the dining room, this time with wariness in her steps. Seeing she wasn't in danger of being smacked with a ladle or banned from eating, she took her place at the table and started to eat. She really appreciated Mia letting her stay here, but if you combined her strictness with her prudish nature and quick judgment, you got a situation that made the brown-haired Sekirei really wish she could find her Ashikabi very quickly. The only person she had reacted to whatsoever had been a sickly girl at a hospital in the eastern portion of the new capital, Hidaka Chiho. She had been kind, compassionate and a really nice girl from what Uzume could tell at their first and only meeting. She had gone back the next day to wing herself on her, only to discover that she had been transferred to a specialist hospital in America. It had been almost a month since then and she hadn't reacted to anybody else since. Uzume couldn't understand how she couldn't seem to react to anybody. Is something the matter, Uzume-chan? Mia asked in concern. Just wondering why I can't seem to react to anyone. Uzume replied after finishing her mouthful of rice, I mean, I reacted to Chiho-chan, so why nobody else? You are Sekirei number 10, only one step down from the single numbers. Matsu said as she came in and sat at her own place at the table. Logically, that means that a powerful Ashikabi is needed to make you react. Actually, it might also have to do with your expectations as well. Mia put in, you reacted to a girl the first time, so are you limiting yourself to reacting to females or are you including males in your searches? Either is good. Uzume shrugged, I don't really care as long as I get an Ashikabi who treats me well. I found out a bit of interesting news, Uzume-chan. Matsu said, apparently, Sahashi Takami has let her son become an Ashikabi. Takami-sensei has. Uzume asked in surprise, who are his Sekirei? The Raiden Futogo, numbers 11 and 12, as well as number 88. Matsu said, I spied on them when they were being winged. All indications point towards him being a very powerful Ashikabi. At this, Uzume perked up. He is. When Musubi, number 88, winged herself on him, she had an orgasm. Matsu said with a mildly lecherous smirk, think how much power it takes to accomplish that for an Ashikabi. Even more interesting news is that he's going to be moving to Matsuyama-tan's old house in our street. Better and better. Uzume thought. Aloud, she said, when? What does he look like? Sometime today, I think. As for what he looks like, Matsu took a photo from between her breasts and showed it to Uzume. It was of Minato from when he was entering the hospital with his Sekirei. Wow, he's a cutie. Uzume said as she evaluated the photo. Right. Matsu purred, it'll be interesting to see exactly how powerful he is. If I react to him, Oh, the data I could get from analyzing his power. The glasses-wearing girl was almost drooling at the thought of all that lovely data. Matsune, you really are an info junkie, ya know that. Uzume deadpanned, well, I'm in. I'd quite like to react to someone. Don't really care that he already has 3 Sekirei. If anything, it makes for a lot of fun in the bedroom once we all start to get along. Matsu flushed at this and her eyes went distant as she considered the possibilities. A perverted giggle came from her as she imagined it all. Uzume-chan, kindly do not make indecent jokes inside the inn. Mia once again invoked the deadly power of her Hananya mask at the humor of her tenants. Damn it Mia, will you stop doing that? Uzume yelled, that's it. Even if I don't react to Minato, I'm gonna ask to move in with him. It would beat being scolded for a little harmless humor. The purple-haired woman blinked in surprise at this. She was strict, but she personally didn't think she warranted that reaction from Uzume. That's a rather harsh thing to say, Uzume-chan. She reproached her tenant, I'm just trying to enforce your own morals and opinions on us. Uzume interjected, you can act like a nun if you want, Mia, but me. Once I get an Ashikabi, I'm outta here and into his or her bed. That would not be wise, Uzume-chan. Mia said gravely, even although your body is fully developed, your power as a Sekirei is not. Premature sexual activity will stunt your growth in mind and spirit. The 2 other Sekirei eyed her as if she was mad. Assuming you aren't bullshitting me, we're adults by the standard of humans. Uzume pointed out, you haven't aged a bit since you reached your full growth, but I thought that was a part of the whole Sekirei pillar thing. How long do we live for? Oh, slightly longer than the average human lifespan, about 120, if we're careful. Mia said with a smile. As to whether I am bullshitting you, I am not. Then what do you mean by my power isn't fully developed? Uzume asked, slightly offended that her power was being called immature. As you know, at the moment, as unwinged Sekirei, you are only able to access approximately 30% of your powers thanks to MBI's adjustments. The pillar said as she knelt at the table, once you are winged and emerge, that jumps up to 70%. The remaining 30% is automatically bridged when you use your Norito. By you and your Ashikabi becoming closer to each other however, you can surpass the limit with your Norito. Say you reach 100% power thanks to becoming close to your Ashikabi and you then use Norito, putting your total power up to 130%. So, having sex before you hit max means, Matsu contemplated this aloud. Means that you stop at whatever level your power is at before you get penetrated. Mia finished, this is why there is a no illicit relations rule in Izumo Inn, to prevent this from happening. What about the males? Matsu asked, does the same restriction apply there? No, male Sekirei are slightly different again. Mia replied, with the males, it's a question of their hearts and wills choosing to grow stronger for the sake of their Ashikabi once they are winged. Males and females are different that way. How can we tell that our power is fully developed? The 10th Sekirei asked. Either ask me to measure your power or have someone look at your wings whenever you kiss your Ashikabi. Mia replied, if each wing reaches 3 meters in length, you're there. And, you never told us this because, why? Uzume asked, eyeing the 01 Sekirei suspiciously. Because I also believe strongly in the sanctity of marriage. Mia said calmly, while yes, winging yourselves is a form of marriage, it is only valid on the Sekirei home world. We are on Earth, so their law system is the rule here. I do have to point out that MBI violates those laws hundreds of times a day and has done since our ship was discovered. Uzume said bluntly, and we aren't human, so limiting ourselves to human laws is stupid. As you have said, you are you and I am myself. Mia said quietly, while you are unwinged and residing here, you shall follow my rules. Once you are winged, I hope you follow my advice regarding your power as I would hate to see your growth stymied because of mere physical pleasures. Realtor's office. Thank you for your business. The man said as he handed Minato back his MBI VIP card and a receipt of his transaction, namely the purchase of one house for quite the chunk of cash. Housing prices are stupidly high in the new capital. Minato though with a shake of his head. For what had just been charged to his card, he could have bought quite a bit of land back in Hokkaido. Nodding his thanks to the man, Minato headed back out the door and got back into the car after handing the address of his new house to the driver. How did it go, Minato-sama? Hibiki asked. Fine, but the prices of houses around here are ridiculous. He said with a sigh as he sat back. Musubi-chan, how are the new clothes? Musubi, now dressed in a similar outfit to the twins, smiled at her Ashikabi happily. They're a bit different from my battle outfit, but they are nice. That's good. Minato looked her up and down for a moment. I think that traditional Japanese clothes suit you better though. I'll ask Ka-san where a good kimono shop is in the capital and take you three there next time. We're looking forward to it. Hikari said honestly. She had been treated to a nice shopping trip today and had picked up some nice clothes and even some very nice lingerie. Minato had begged off from the last one, but had sat patiently through most of the shopping trip with patience that most men, from the stories Takami and a few other human women had told her, generally didn't have. She ascribed it to being trained by Takami, and made a mental note to thank her mother-in-law for training her son up so well. What does our new home look like, Minato-sama? Hibiki asked curiously. It's a 2-story building with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a good-sized kitchen, dining room, as well as a largish yard and a front garden. Minato said, recalling the floor plan the realtor had shown him. It also had a couple of storerooms that we can convert to whatever we want. How the heck did Takami-san manage to reserve that for you? Hikari wondered aloud. Dunno. Minato shrugged as the streets went by. Knowing Ka-san though, anything's possible. She might just have threatened to beat him up or something. The Raiden Futogo nodded in agreement. That did seem like Takami's style. Anyway, the furniture situation isn't quite as bad as Ka-san thought it was. Minato continued, the previous owner took most of the chairs, sideboards and beds, but left the large kitchen appliances behind, so we don't have as much to do as we thought. We'd better check them out to make sure they're not junk. Hikari pointed out, cookers and washing machines aren't cheap, so the last owner must have had a good reason for leaving them behind. True enough. Minato conceded, we'll check the kitchen out first, then make sure the rest of the house is up to spec. Minato-san, we have arrived. The driver called out a few minutes later. Thank you. Minato said, we might be a while, so take a break, come back in about an hour so we can go furniture shopping. Thank you, Minato-san. The driver smiled thankfully. I have to get some shopping done for Takami-san, so I'll go off and do that. See you in an hour. In short order, Minato and his girls unpacked the car of their shopping and watched the car trundle off. They then turned to regard their new home, which looked just as Minato had described it. It was slightly more modern looking than the rest of the houses in the street, although not by much. Let's head in, girls. Minato said as he started forwards himself. Hi. They replied as they matched his pace. Minato fished the key for the house from his pocket and unlocked the door. That's something else, I'll have to have keys cut for you three as well. Why? Hibiki asked, we can just go out with you. What if you and Hikari want to spend some quality time as sisters together? Minato asked, you'd need a key for that. Besides, we are married, by Sekirei rules anyway, so it's only right that you all have keys to our home. Hikari hugged Minato gently. Arigato, for being so considerate, Minato-sama. She said and pecked him on the cheek, making him flush red again. Entering the house, they quickly went over the place, confirming that it was as the floor plan back at the realtors had said it was. It also had a large living room area and even a large basement. What the heck? Minato muttered, there's no way that the house was built like this. The previous owner must have heavily reconstructed the place. Makes you wonder why he moved out if he spent so much on it. Who cares, it's ours now. Hikari said with a grin. While you were checking out the basement, Hibiki and I went over the kitchen. All the major appliances are in good condition, so no worries about them. We don't have a rice cooker though. Add it to the list. Minato said with a smile, underneath futons, sofas, chairs, beds and rugs. By the way, where's Musubi-chan? Dunno. She vanished while we were in the kitchen. Hibiki replied with a frown. A loud crash, swiftly followed by a feminine yelp, signaled the location of the fist-type Sekirei as being somewhere on the first floor. Minato hurried off to see what his third Sekirei had gotten herself into. He came across her sprawled out underneath a large amount of mops, brooms and metal buckets that had apparently fallen atop her when she opened the door to what was now evidently a broom cupboard. Ow tilde. Musubi moaned. As Minato helped her out from underneath the pile of cleaning accoutrements, he couldn't help but sneak appreciative glances at Musubi's breasts, which were the biggest he had ever seen. It did help that Musubi herself was a very likable person, innocent and kind along with her very delectable body. Be more careful when you open doors, okay? He told her as he placed everything back in the cupboard and closed the door firmly. Hi. Sorry for worrying you, Minato-sama. Musubi apologized meekly. The raven-haired Ashikabi chuckled and patted her head kindly, no apologies necessary. Just be more careful, okay? Hi. Musubi chirped brightly. Good girl. Now, let's check out this floor. Minato said and Musubi obligingly trotted after him as he inspected the second floor. There were indeed 3 bedrooms on this floor, with one larger than the others by a small amount. Musubi declared that this had to be Minato's room. Why? Minato asked. He didn't mind, but he was curious as to the answer. You are our Ashikabi and master, this room will act as a symbol of status that will show that. Hibiki said as she and Hikari came up behind them, I suppose that your sister will sleep in there too. What is she like? Yukari. Minato asked with a frown, she's a nice girl but a bit clingy. She has a bad habit of trying to find fault in any girl who tries to get close to me. Add in the fact it takes a crowbar to pry her from me unless we live in separate cities or buildings and you come up with part of the reason I haven't had a girlfriend before now. A brocon. Great. Hikari snorted, if she tries that shit with us, she's going to see exactly why Manaka gave us S&M costumes. Minato said. We like dominating girls and being dominated by guys. Hibiki said bluntly, even though she was blushing like a tomato at this, we prefer to be dominated, thus the M costumes, but we do like the occasional girl to play with, at least we think we will. We are virgins after all. Minato flushed at that. Right, we won't be doing that for a while now. We still don't know each other well and I think I'd like Ka-san to give Musubi the talk, as she doesn't have a clue what we're talking about. Truly, Musubi was so lost that she needed a GPS in order to find where she was. She had multiple question marks floating above her head, as she didn't know what her Ashikabi and the 2 first Sekirei were talking about. Don't worry, Musubi. Hibiki told her gently, Takami-san will tell you all about it at another time, okay? Oh. Okay then. Musubi looked reassured that she would get an explanation at some point, so she put it out of her mind for now. A loud honking noise made them jump. Minato checked his watch and was astounded to see that an hour had gone by already. Looks like time really did go by fast when you had fun. Right then. We have to go shopping for furniture and the like now. Minato said and looked at the list he had written down. We'll order the furniture to be delivered tomorrow and get futons, a rice cooker and some basic food supplies for tomorrow last. Is that okay with you 3? Hi. His Sekirei chorused. A little time later. A furniture shop. This bed is way too big. Minato protested, gesturing at the king-size 4-poster bed that Hibiki and Hikari were adamant that he buy. Minato-sama. Hikari moved in and whispered into his ear, we Sekirei are very physically demonstrative and need contact with our Ashikabi. The likelihood that we'll sleepwalk into your bed is high, so trust me, you'll need a big bed. Minato's sweat dropped at that. Locking his door wouldn't do him any good because he saw Musubi accidentally punch a hole in a wall when she was trying to swat a fly that had buzzed past her. Fine. He sighed, I just really hope that the unlimited, in unlimited value MBI VIP cards isn't just false advertising. They had almost finished with the furniture shopping, having bought beds, dressers, chairs, sofas, tables, more chairs and now this oversized excuse of a bed. They had even bought a widescreen TV with a built-in DVD player recorder. Right, now for the basic necessities for tonight. Minato said as he led his girls out of the shop. He was still stunned at exactly how much money he had spent today, but, meh. He had cash to burn and it was for his girls. A scream made Minato jump and look around to find the source. A girl with light brown hair and wearing a long white gown was struggling to get away from a man who was trying to drag her into an alley. The man had an arrogant sneer and the air of a bully around him that set Minato's hackles on edge. Stop it. The girl wailed, I'm not reacting to you. Fuck that, bitch. The man barked, one of those sekirei with those MBI card things, right? If you become my women, I'm set fair life. Why that? Hikari seethed. Musubi, go help her. Don't go all out. Minato ordered, his voice broadcasting his own anger. Hikari, Hibiki, you're with me. Hi. Musubi charged at the man with a scowl on her face. How dare this man try and forcibly wing a sekirei? If Yumi-sama were here, she'd blast him with her positron beams. The brunette grabbed the bully as soon as she was close enough and ripped him from the other brunette, who looked up in astonishment at someone actually helping her. The fuck? The man glared at Musubi in bewildered anger. Who the hell are you? Number 88, Musubi. The fist-type sekirei said firmly, how dare you try and force yourself on an unwilling sekirei? Another one. My lucky day. The man grinned and tried to break Musubi's grip on him, but was utterly unable to do so. Are you alright? Minato asked the girl, who stared at him in surprise. Why yes, I'm fine. She said as she self-consciously brushed the wrinkles out of her gown. He just grabbed me out of nowhere and knocked my hammer out of my hands before I could do anything. Hammer? Minato asked in confusion. The sekirei pointed at a hammer that was taller than she was lying on the ground nearby. The double-headed hammer must weigh more than the sekirei herself did. You should grab it then. Minato told her. Hikari, Hibiki, do your thing. With pleasure, Minato-sama. The Raiden Futogo smirked evilly as they stepped forwards to confront the man. Musubi released him with a weak push and returned to her Ashikabi's side. You little bitch. The man growled as he began to stalk towards Musubi, completely ignoring the twins, much to his disadvantage, as he was suddenly electrocuted by them. Gah! He shrieked before collapsing in a burnt, twitching heap. He wasn't all that. Hikari said as she lazily examined her nails. You're an Ashikabi? The girl asked. Yep. Sahashi Minato. Nice to meet you. The raven-haired Ashikabi introduced himself with a smile. Sekirei N number 84, Yushima, the sekirei replied shyly, a blush on her face. Can I ask if you wish to wing me? Minato looked at her in surprise and noticed the telltale signs beginning to show themselves. Flushed face, check. Rubbing legs together, check. You're reacting to me, aren't you? Minato asked with a sigh. Hi, Yushima replied, you're really strong. How didn't I notice you before? This is beyond me. You were in a pseudo-combat situation. Hibiki told her, your survival instincts took precedence before your instinct to find an Ashikabi. Well, Minato-sama. Looks like we're going to have to get supplies for 5 then. Minato sighed with a crooked smile. Thank you. Yushima breathed in gratitude before gently placing her hammer to one side and kissing Minato full on the lips. Her blue wings burst from her back and seemed to fold around them before vanishing. Let the gravity of our bond never separate us, my Ashikabi. Yushima sighed as she cuddled into him. Welcome to the family, Yushima-chan. Musubi said with a smile before nudging the fallen wannabe Ashikabi with the toe of her shoe. What should we do about this guy, Minato-sama? He might go after another sekirei if we leave him here. I'll give Ka-san a call. Minato pulled out his mobile one-handed, keeping one around Yushima, and hit the speed dial for his mother's phone. Moshi Moshi. Takami answered. Ka-san, we have a bit of a situation here. Minato said and outlined the problem. Well done, Min-chan. Takami said warmly, take the scum to the nearest police station. I'll arrange for him to be sent to prison as fast as is physically possible. The last thing we need are idiots like that as Ashikabi. I'll be swinging by your place in a couple of hours. Should I bring takeout? It would help. Minato replied, we're just about to go futon and rice cooker shopping. Yushima-chan is still a bit shaken up by what happened, so could you give her a once-over while you're there? I was planning on doing that anyway. Takami replied, I've gotta go now. See you in a couple of hours, Min-chan. See you later, Ka-san. Minato hung up and looked around to his 4 sekirei, Yushima-chan, my mother's Sahashi Takami and she wants to give you a look over later on. Is that alright with you? Hi. Yushima nodded. Right then. Let's get to shopping. Minato nodded. Hey, you. A loud, rough voice shouted. Oh crap, Hikari muttered, recognizing this voice. Minato turned to see a black-haired man in his mid-twenties, wearing a rough black jacket and a pair of jeans stalking towards him. Who are you? Minato asked. Seo Kaoru and you winged my Sekirei. He growled. Huh, was all Minato could say as the rough-looking man glared at him. Don't. Me. The man growled, you winged my Sekirei. Girls. Minato asked, any of you know this guy? Never seen him. Yushima replied, fingering her large hammer nervously. Nope. Musubi said with a shrug. He was the person we reacted to initially. Hikari admitted. As we said, our reaction was very mild. Hibiki added quietly. Seo gaped at the Raiden Fudogo in disbelief. But you reacted to me, not him. Seo, Sekirei can react to multiple people. Hibiki sighed, it just so happens that Minato-sama is a bonfire to your lit candle, compatibility-wise. A kid like this is more compatible than me. Seo wasn't looking happy at this, not to mention a little disbelieving. Yep. Hikari shrugged before she and her sister draped themselves on either side of Minato and snuggled into him, making him flush at the close contact. Of course the compatibility issue is just one reason we chose Minato-sama. Another reason is that any Sekirei winged by you has their MBI cards cancelled. That bastard Manaka. Seo snarled, fists clenched and shaking in fury. Anyway, we've been winged, so there isn't anything you can do about it. Hibiki said as she cuddled her Ashikabi. TCH. Seo glowered at Minato for a moment before stomping off, I'll just have to wing another Sekirei then. If I come across ya then kid, all bets are off. The next thing Minato knew, the hairs on the back of his neck stood up and a pair of lightning bolts shot from the outstretched hands of the pair of enraged Sekirei attached to him, reaching out to strike Seo in the center of the back, electrocuting him to the point Minato could swear that he could see the Mont's skeleton as the electricity danced across Seo's body. Don't ever threaten our Ashikabi. The twins spoke in unison as Seo collapsed to the ground, burnt and twitching spasmodically. How the hell didn't I get shocked there? Minato asked as he patted down his hair. You're our Ashikabi, our powers cannot hurt you. Hibiki explained, actually, our default is that you cannot be hurt by our abilities. Musubi there can't punch or kick you, nor can Yushima-san hit you with her hammer. By applying a considerable amount of power, we can bypass that if we want, but it is draining to do so. Useful to know. Minato remarked as he eyed Seo crawling away looking like an overcooked barbecue rib. Now, Yushima-chan, we ordered our beds earlier and the shop's closed now, so would you mind sharing with Musubi-chan until we can order one for you? Hi, Minato-sama. His newest Sekirei nodded shyly. All to the good. Minato sighed. Now girls, while having you hug me is nice, I do need to be able to walk properly so we can finish our shopping. Besides, it's Musubi and Yoshima's turn. Hi. The Raiden Fudogo replied a bit sulkily and reluctantly removed themselves from Minato, making way for an enthusiastic Musubi and shy Yoshima to take their places. They perked up when Minato told them to take the idiot who tried to forcibly wing Yoshima to the nearest Koban police box and not to be gentle about it. 1 hour, 45 minutes later. Master bedroom, Minato's new house. That's everything. Minato said as he straightened up from setting up his futon up in his room. Ka-san should be here in about an hour. Takami-sensei is a nice person. Yoshima offered shyly. She was always nice to all of us while she was adjusting us in the lab. Yoshima had volunteered to help Minato move things to his room while the other three put the groceries away and set up the rice cooker. Glad to hear it. Minato said with a smile. Yoshima-chan, I've been wondering. Is that large hammer your specialty? Well, Yoshima paused before answering. All Sekirei are stronger than humans, more resilient, faster, more agile, and some of us can use the elements, like the twins. Others have been trained in the use of a weapon. I am one of the few who can only channel an element through a weapon. I can manipulate gravitational forces through my hammer, making it as light as a feather or increasing the strength of the blows. My Norito is an enlarged version of that. Norito? Minato asked in confusion. A Norito is a Sekurei's ultimate weapon, a prayer that is unique to each individual Sekurei, to them and them alone. Yushima replied, with a blush, by kissing our Ashikabi, we get a strong power boost and a unique attack. My own is Gravity Hammer, which expands the size of my weapon's hammerhead and the area of effect that my gravity can touch. Any Sekurei caught in the epicenter will be defeated, even a single number. Wow, that's some ability. Minato said admiringly. It's nothing, really. Yushima's blush grew deeper at the obvious admiration from her Ashikabi. I've always been indecisive, lacked confidence. That's why that man was able to disarm me so easily. I hesitated to attack an ordinary human and almost got forcibly winged. I think you were just being cautious. Minato said thoughtfully. I mean, when you have more strength than other people, it's natural to think before you act. You were just taken off guard by him grabbing you so suddenly. If it happens again, I think you'll react quicker. Once bitten, twice shy, right? Minato-sama. Yushima hugged him. Thank you for being so kind. Easy now. Minato chuckled, patting the excited Sekurei on the back. Let's go see how the others are doing. As Minato made his way down the stairs with Yushima in tow, he heard raised voices coming from the kitchen. Which meant that Musubi was arguing with either Hikari or Hibiki, likely Hikari. Because your boobs are the size of cow udders doesn't mean he'll sleep with you first. Hikari snapped at Musubi, who had a mulish expression on her face as Minato hurried into the room. Musubi doesn't get it, but he will. The Miko look-alike retorted stubbornly. Oi! Minato called, what's this about? Minato-sama, this girl wants to bed you first. An outraged Hikari exclaimed, it isn't right. We're your first Sekurei. Musubi's a wife just like you too. Musubi retorted. Oh dear. Minato sighed. Hibiki, how did this get started? I have no idea. The more level-headed twin replied. 1 minute I'm putting the rice away, the next minute these two are arguing about who is going to bed you first, us or her. I see. Minato pinched the bridge of his nose in an attempt to stave off the incipient headache that he felt coming on, achieving only middling success. He had a premonition that as he winged more Sekurei, the headaches would be more frequent and increase appropriately. Musubi, wait until my Ka-san has told you what sleeping with someone as a wife is before you make any decisions about that. Minato attempted to channel King Solomon as he mediated between his Sekurei. Hikari, insulting your sister wives is not acceptable. Please apologize to Musubi for insulting her. Sorry. Hikari said sulkily to Musubi, who nodded in acceptance of the begrudging apology. Good girl. Minato gave her a peck on the cheek, making her flush happily. Now, is everything put away? Hi, Minato-sama. Hibiki nodded. The rice was the last thing that needed to be put away and I set up futon for Nei-san, myself, Musubi and Yushima. Well done Hibiki. Minato was impressed with the younger twin. Now let's have a seat. I want to talk to you all about the Sekurei plan before Ka-san gets here. Once they were all seated at the kitchen table, Minato started to speak. Right now, Ka-san has told me the bare bones of the Sekurei plan, that it's a survival tournament involving the Sekurei. It is highly secretive and involves multiple stages, of which we are in the first stage. Have I missed anything? No, you have outlined everything pretty accurately. Hibiki replied, what is it you would like to discuss? When I winged each of you, a crest of some sort emerged from your backs, shortly followed by your, rather beautiful, wings. Minato smiled as his Sekurei uniformly preened at that comment. What I would like to know is what it is. The Sekurei crest is a Sekurei's weak point. Yushima said quietly, of the two methods of defeating Sekurei, it is the quickest and least painful to the target Sekurei. By placing a finger upon an enemy Sekurei's crest and reciting our Norito, we can remove the crest, shutting down the Sekurei and removing her from the Sekurei plan. It kills them. Minato yelped. No, no, no. Hikari shook her head adamantly. It places the Sekurei into a kind of suspended animation, a coma until they are recovered. I have heard rumors that there is something that can reactivate a deactivated Sekurei, but I have no idea if it is true. All of you are to watch each other's backs. Minato ordered, slightly pale from the shock of the information. Yushima-chan, you mentioned that removing the crest is the easiest method of defeating a Sekirei. Are there any other methods? There are two. Yushima replied quietly. The first is to cause a certain level of damage to the Sekirei, which activates a safety mechanism, automatically removing the crest and sending a signal to MBI HQ. The other isn't a pleasant one to consider. Hibiki took up the tale at this point. The final method is to kill a Sekirei's Ashikabi, which automatically deactivates all Sekirei winged by that Ashikabi. This is strictly forbidden in the rules of the Sekirei plan, but some Ashikabi might be callous enough to order it done. Message received. Be careful about other Ashikabi Sekirei. Minato said seriously, a trickle of sweat falling down the side of his face. His Sekirei's lives were literally depending on his continued existence. Talk about pressure. Please do. Hibiki replied equally seriously. Now, when was Takami-sensei supposed to arrive again? Right here. Takami answered as she strolled in with a large bag of Chinese takeout in one hand. I wish you hadn't told Minato about the Sekirei failsafe, but there you are. Let's eat, shall we? Failsafe. Minato frowned. Musubi could punch your head off. Takami remarked conversationally. The twins could torture you to death with electricity. Yushima could smash you to death with her hammer. Without a pressing reason to keep you alive, a few of the Sekirei wouldn't care what happened to you. By tying you to their own lives, it means that they cannot be careless with you and must protect you. One of Manaka's less ridiculous ideas. As his mother doles out the food, Minato was thinking about everything that had transpired today and came to a conclusion. His life was not going to be anything like easy or simple until this game was over, and it probably wouldn't be afterwards, what with being married to a gaggle of gorgeous alien women. Yukari was going to kill him, if his grandmother didn't beat her to it. So, Takami said after they finished eating, Yushima-chan. Nice to see you again and welcome to the family. Arigato, Takami-sensei. Yushima replied with a blush. Not sensei. Takami corrected, Okawa-sama. Say it with me, Takami Okawa-sama. A furiously blushing Yushima muttered the words while doing a close examination of the tabletop, making the gray-haired women laugh. Now then, were you injured by the scum who tried to wing you? The head of the Sekirei clan asked as she examined the brunette Sekirei critically. No, Minato-sama stopped him before he could do anything more than grab me. Yushima replied with a grateful smile at Minato. It makes me wonder how he knew you were a Sekirei from the get-go. Takami mused, we might have a mole, other than Seo, of course. Speaking of Seo, we ran into him just after Minato-sama got off the phone to you. Hikari said and outlined their confrontation with Seo Kaoru, including the man's subsequent threat. He was just spouting tough words. Takami dismissed Seo's threat casually. He and Takehito talked about this kind of thing a lot, so now that he's calmed down, he'll likely have remembered about it and will feel pretty sheepish about it. Don't worry about Seo, he knows better than to mess with you guys. The twins huffed indignantly as they muttered, he had better know better. Takami took Yushima into another room to do a more thorough physical exam and warned Minato not to peek, resulting in the boy turning bright red and denying the intention ever crossing his mind in a high-pitched voice that held mingled tones of outrage and embarrassment in it. Well, she's as fit as a fiddle. Tamaki announced once she finished her examination and led the blushing Sekirei back to the others. Just give her some TLC and she'll be fine. TLC? Musubi asked in bemusement. Tender loving care. Minato explained. Yushima-chan was almost subjected to having her choice taken from her and she needs time to get over it. Oh. The fist-type Sekirei nodded. By the way, Ka-san, do you think you could give Musubi-chan the talk at some point? Minato asked. She's been asking about sleeping with me. Ah. Right. I'll tell her all about the birds and the bees before I go. Takami nodded. How was the shopping? Expensive. Minato sighed. If it wasn't for the fact the MBI cards are the next best thing to unlimited, I would have hesitated to buy half of what we did today. By the way, do you know any good kimono shops in the capital? No, but I can find out. Takami replied as she smiled crookedly, taking your girls for kimono and yukata. Yes. I think Musubi looks nice, very nice in traditional clothes, and the others will look good in them as well. Minato replied honestly. His four sekirei all restrained the urge to kiss him into submission. Good. Now, I'm going to give you a warning. Takami said seriously, there are a group of sekirei working for MBI called the Discipline Squad. They are the enforcement wing of MBI and report to Manaka himself. Do not get caught breaking the rules or they will terminate your sekirei, especially the leader of the squad, number 4, the black sekirei, Karasuba. Karasuba-sama. Musubi asked in surprise. You know her? Hibiki asked in shock. Karasuba-sama helped to save my life. Musubi replied with a smile, along with Yumi-sama. True. Takami acknowledged, but she hates humans. Even Ashikabi are little more than vermin in her opinion. Be very, very careful if you as much as suspect that she's nearby. Got it. Minato nodded. I'm curious Ka-san. How many stages are there in this plan? Manaka hasn't been explicit, but he has alluded to at least 4, possibly as many as 6. The ash-haired woman replied. And, what's the prize for the winners? He continued. The winning sekirei and Ashikabi are allowed to remain together forever. Musubi replied for his mother. Definitely a good prize. Minato smiled at his sekirei, who nodded back with smiles of their own. Well, I'd better explain the facts of life to Musubi before I head out. Takami sighed, I have to visit a friend nearby in a while, so let's get this over with. Just to warn you Musubi-chan, this will be very embarrassing for you. The brunette looked puzzled as she followed Takami into the next room. There was a muffled sound of talking for a few minutes, swiftly followed by a loud, eep. Followed by a thud. Min-chan. Takami called, Musubi's fainted. Minato facepalmed. 10 minutes later. Izumo Inn. Takami strolled up to the inn's door and rang the bell, a small grin still on her face as she recalled the scarlet-red face of Musubi as she was told the basics of what sex was. She had managed to retain consciousness until the end of the basic lecture, but Takami suspected that she would have to go into more depth at a later date. What fun! Takami-san. Mia greeted her when she opened the door. I'm pretty certain I made it clear that no one from MBI was allowed in Izumo Inn. The giant purple Hananya mask phased into existence and loomed over her, leering down at an unaffected Takami. Okay, 1. If Takehito couldn't make me flinch with that, you don't stand a chance. The head of the sekirei clan said casually, and 2. I'm here as a mother, not as a member of MBI. Now if you are quite finished grandstanding, we have a lot to discuss. You haven't changed much, Takami-san. Mia sighed, the Hananya dissipating instantly. Come on in, although I have a pretty good idea what it is you are here to say. The landlady of Izumo Inn led Takami into the dining room, where a petrified Matsu was cowering behind Uzume, looking as if she were about to faint with fear. Mia-tan. Why'd you let her in? Matsu whimpered. Oh, keep your skirts straight Matsu. Takami sighed in irritation, I'm not going to tell that idiot Manaka where you are. I'm actually glad you took the Jinki god vessel, as it means one less that Manaka has. Matsu peered around Uzume suspiciously, the veil sekirei rolling her eyes at the wisdom sekirei's antics. Really? Yes. Takami gave her an exasperated look. I have no idea what he's been up to because he's kept me running off my feet until recently doing both my job and Takehito's old job at once, so the less advantages he has, the better. Is that why you manipulated your son into the sekirei plan? Mia asked pointedly. It would have happened without my interference, all I did was give it a nudge. Takami replied with a shrug, Minato is a good kid and having 4+ sekirei around him is going to make him grow something of a spine, although when he stood up to his old landlord, that was unexpected. Maybe he was developing one, before the little bastard broke his arm again. Someone broke your son's arm. Again? Mia asked sharply. Yep. Same person, with a grudge against MBI. Takami scowled at the remembered wrath she felt when she heard, that's one reason I sent the Raiden Fudigo, nothing more painful than electrocution. I take it you know about Min-chan's new sekirei. Yushima, sekirei number 84. Matsu said promptly, winged by Sahashi Minato approximately 2¾ of an hour ago after he defeated someone attempting to wing her by force. How's she doing? Shaken up and nervous, but unharmed. Takami replied, and how are you and Uzume doing? Reacting to Min-chan yet? Uzume and Matsu flushed. Yeah, quite a bit. Matsu said as she fidgeted slightly. Whenever he passes the house, neither of us can ignore the heat. Uzume added. Looks like Min-chan is more powerful than I thought. Takami mused, you both have my permission to wing yourselves on him if he accepts. Thanks, sensei. Uzume nodded, what's he like? Matsu pulled his school files, but nothing tells me anything about who he is, other than the fact he's really easy to pressure. My fault, I'm afraid. Takami sighed, me, his sister and his grandmother are really dominating women. We barely gave him any room to grow. The instant he had his own opinion, we usually stomped it back down fairly quickly. The only time he ever stood up to us was when he insisted on coming to the new capital for university. That was a shocker. He seems very intelligent. Matsu mused, he just needs to practice exam conditions and he'll be fine. That reminds me, the entrance exam is next week. Takami realized, I should remind Min-chan to study for it once the furniture is delivered tomorrow. He's bought furniture already. Mia asked mildly, has he spent a lot of money? He got gulled. Takami shrugged, a lot of the stuff he bought is overpriced, but not absurdly so. MBI's footing the bill, so it doesn't matter. Minako will laugh the expense off like always. Uzume shook her head in disbelief. Is he that dismissive of how money is spent? No, but he understands that anyone paying with an MBI card is going to be gouged price-wise by our competitors as an act of spite against the company. Takami replied with a shrug, as it is, this is just giving Minaka ammo to build a case against his rivals for overcharging MBI. He'll give them more than enough rope to hang themselves with. Sneaky and underhanded. Matsu commented. Yeah, speaking of that, I assume Matsu has told you about the other three who have multiple Sekirei. Takami asked. Sanada in the west, Higa in the east and Mikogami in the south. Mia replied, a small sneer of distaste at the last two names. Over 20 Sekirei have been forcibly winged between Mikogami and Higa, with Sanada winging only 6 Sekirei himself, all of whom reacted to him. Yep. Higa is CEO one of MBI's direct competitors and is treating the Sekirei plan as an opportunity to usurp MBI's status as primus inter pares of Japan's and the world's businesses. Matsu added, Mikogami Hayato is the sole heir to a vast fortune. He is a game-obsessed boy who sees the Sekirei plan as the ultimate game, and his Sekirei as game pieces, just as Higa sees winning a Sekirei as a mere business contract. They both have subordinate Ashikabi already, and the Sekirei plan has only begun. With MBI HQ in the center, they are fairly evenly spread out among 3 of the 4 cardinal directions, west, east and south, leaving the northern area of the new capital vacant, until now. Takami said with a small smile. You've deliberately positioned your son to be a major player in the Sekirei plan. Mia summed up, her eyes locked upon the gray-haired woman, I would like to know why. Minaka is an idiot. An insane idiot. Takami replied flatly, there is only so much I can do to rein him in myself. Homura is helping to protect the unwinged Sekirei as best as he can and Matsu has taken one of Minaka's little prizes out of play for the moment. What I hope Minato will become is a wildcard, something that Minaka will have a hard time predicting or controlling. With his sense of honor, he will do his best to stop any plans or situations that would violate it. A troubleshooter, one that has no loyalty to MBI. Matsu examined Takami closely, why are you willing to put Minato-tan in the line of fire? As I said before, Minato would have become an Ashikabi with or without my interference. Takami replied irritably, and, with or without my prompting, he would do what he felt was right in any given situation, or rather, he will do what is right, regardless of my prompting or MBI's preferences and interests in the matter. You seriously don't trust Minaka? Mia stated, slight incredulity evident in her voice. He's kept the endgame of the Sekirei plan from me, despite my best attempts. Takami said frankly, for all I know, he could be planning mass genocide or a eugenics program. Only 2 people can stop him and one of them is dead. The other one is you, Mia. As you refuse to get involved however, I have to make best use of what I have at my disposal, up to and including my own son and my own daughter. Mia just stared at Takami, the air around her growing ice cold with the number 00 Sekure's silent rage at the insinuation that she was either willfully blind or uncaring towards the plight of the other Sekure. Takehito, he wanted me to put down my sword. Mia stated coldly, so I did. That is all there is to it. And if he saw what Minaka's been up to recently. The increasing power limiting of the Sekure. The scarring suffered by number 7 that turned her into a scrapped number. Takami demanded, what then Mia? When will it be suitable justification for you to act instead of removing yourself from the board? The two Sekure at the table flinched away from the scathing tone that Takami used against Mia. They could feel Mia's power fluctuating and roiling with turmoil and anger and were quailing at the sheer amount of power that the pillar of the Sekure possessed. Even if they both used their Norito, they wouldn't come close to that level of power. And yet, despite the fact that Mia could crush her like a bug, Sahashi Takami had the sheer gall to challenge Mia, to call her on her self-imposed neutrality. Part of it was because she was a human, and thus couldn't feel Mia's power. Another, larger, part was that Takami couldn't care less about Mia's position as the pillar of the Sekure. She called people on their bullshit regardless of social positions. Hell, she regularly tried to kill Minaka for his many and varied idiocies. Well, that's what I came to say. Takami sighed. Tell Homura I'll keep him up to date on any stupidity of Minaka's as I find out about it. I'll see myself out. The gray-haired woman got up and nonchalantly walked off, leaving behind a pair of awed and stunned Sekure and a silent pillar of the Sekure in her wake. The next day, mid-morning. Minato's bedroom. Sahashi Minato awoke rather abruptly for some reason, wondering exactly why his limbs felt like they were being weighed down by something. Cracking an eye open, he gazed blearily down his futon at the rest of his body and almost had a nosebleed at the sight that he beheld. Each holding one of his arms, Hibiki and Hikari cuddled into him, utterly naked save for a pair of very sexy panties each. On his right leg, Musubi was sleeping peacefully in one of Minato's shirts, his leg trapped between her bountiful breasts. Finally, on his left leg, Yushima held it gently but firmly, a sleeping gown she had purchased the previous day doing nothing to conceal her svelte, athletic build and pert breasts. It wasn't a dream. Minato thought with a combination of relief and wonderment, I really have been married to 4 beautiful alien girls and who knows how many more will be on the way. Oh, and those aforementioned sexy alien girls are in a fighting tournament run by the head of MBI for reasons that Kami-sama alone knows. After a moment of contemplating how his life had changed so much in less than 24 hours, Minato decided to try to extricate himself from the delectable trap his limbs were locked into. After a bit of wiggling, he managed to free his left leg and his arms, but Musubi, as expected of a fist-type Sekure, had a strong grip and seemed determined to hold onto his leg at all costs. It didn't exactly help matters that, little Minato, was standing at full attention because of the soft sensations his leg was feeling in its current location. Musubi-chan. Minato called softly, Musubi-chan, it's time to wake up. The busty brunette mumbled, Don, wanna. Musubi-chan, I have to get up or there won't be any breakfast. He said sternly. This made her raise her head sleepily and peer at him blearily. Minato-sama. I have to make breakfast. He repeated, so could you let go of my leg? Promise to come back? She asked sleepily. Promise. Minato said, although he knew that he would be coming back only to get her up. Now, can you let go already? Hi. Musubi pouted and reluctantly let it go. Minato patted her on the head as he got up and headed off for his morning ablutions. Once he was finished with that, he started cooking a light breakfast, before reconsidering and started making a large breakfast. A Sekure-sized portion was 3 times the size of a regular potion after all. When he was almost finished, the scent of the cooked food roused his Sekure from their slumber and lured them downstairs. He watched in bemusement as they easily ate a large portion that he would struggle with and then ask for seconds, which he provided. Today, Minato started once everyone was finished eating, we will be having furniture delivered by people not involved in the Sekure plan. This means no zapping people, no talking about Ashikabi or Sekure, and Yushima-chan's hammer will have to be hidden somewhere until they leave. We wouldn't zap them for no reason, Minato-sama. Hikari protested. I do not want to risk the discipline squad getting sent to talk with us about breaking the rules. Minato said firmly, so if any of them get fresh with you, just kick their asses. No special abilities. Yushima-chan, will you be okay with strangers around? Hi, I think so, Yushima replied shyly. I'd prefer to stay close to you if at all possible if I can't have my hammer, Minato-sama. Fair enough. Minato allowed, Musubi, you can direct the movers around, but please avoid any displays of superhuman strength. Hi. She chirped. Hikari and Hibiki, I have a special request for you too. He continued, turning to his first two Sekirei. I'd like it if you patrolled the city and kept an eye out for any more incidents like what happened to Yushima-chan yesterday. Right. Hibiki nodded. What are our instructions if we discover someone attempting to forcibly wing a Sekirei? Knock them out and take them to a police box. Minato replied, then escort the Sekirei to the MBI hospital for a checkup before returning to your patrol route. As you wish, Minato-sama. Hikari said. Oh, here. Minato fished out one of the twins' MBI cards from his pocket and gave it to Hibiki. Use this and buy a mobile phone for yourselves so you can keep me updated. Once you buy one, give me a call on this number once an hour and be back by 5. Hi. The twins chorused. We'd better get to it then. Minato nodded at his Sekirei. Before you go off though. He kissed each of his Sekirei on the lips, which made their wings emerge again, as well as making them pant slightly with desire. Off you go then. Minato smiled. His mother had told him in private the previous night that Sekirei were very physically demonstrative and rarely cared about personal space, so he would have to man up and take charge of them, if he wanted to keep being the one in charge. She had discussed various strategies with him and they had eventually settled on a firm, loving relationship with them. Not that it was hard. Minato was already crushing on 3 of his 4 Sekirei and Yushima was the odd one out only because she was so recently added. She would be added to the list soon enough. Seeing the half-lidded dazed expressions on his Sekirei's faces made Minato smile. He had a feeling that today was going to be just as interesting, if not more so, than the previous day. A few minutes later. With the Raiden Futogo. Minato-sama is very affectionate this morning. Hikari said to her sister as they walked down the street to carry out their orders. His isn't he? Hibiki sighed happily. If we get kissed like that every morning, I'll be a happy girl. Hikari had to agree with her sister. Minato was very easy to fall for, even without the Sekirei Ashikabi bond that they had, she would have to wager. It would certainly explain his brother complexing sister. What are we going to do about Minato-sama's sister when she moves in? She asked as she recalled that irritant that would come to dwell with them. We give her a warning not to mess with us. Hibiki replied casually examining her nails. If she chooses to ignore that warning, she'll get punished. The sisters exchanged equally wicked grins at this point. Takami-sensei had given them permission to deal with Sahashi Yukari however they pleased as long as no permanent harm came to her, physical or psychological, which left plenty of scope for suitable chastisements for them to choose from. Hey! Number 11. Number 12. That you? A voice called from behind them. The sisters turned to see a familiar face from their time in the adjustment lab. Number 10. Uzume. Hibiki nodded politely to the brunette Sekirei who jogged up to them. You look well. Have you emerged yet? Nope. Uzume sighed. I've only reacted to one person, who got transferred to a specialist hospital in America the next day. The twins had to wince at that. Talk about bad luck. Actually, I told a lie just then. Uzume admitted, I'm kinda reacting to your Ashikabi. So is number 2, Matsu. A single number. Hibiki half shouted, wait, how are you reacting to him? You haven't even been near him as far as I know. I live at Izumo Inn, just back there. Uzume replied, jerking her thumb back at a house that wasn't far from their new home. Whenever you and your Ashikabi went past the place yesterday, Matsune and I really felt it, if you know what I mean. Given that she was rubbing her thighs together at the reminder, the twins got it immediately, making them grin at how powerful their Ashikabi-sama was. So, why tell us? Hikari asked, why not just go up to Minato-sama and ask him to wing you? He'd do it you know. You two are his first Sekirei. Uzume replied, While Takami-sensei gave us permission as his mother, it would be impolite to wing ourselves on him without the permission of the two of you. Matsune has to keep out of sight of MBI, so she asked me to ask you on her behalf. The twins looked at each other and talked in twinspeak, a language that is unique to twins. Made up of slight twitches in facial muscles and a few sounds, they could talk without anyone catching on to what they were saying. We give you permission, Hibiki said, but you have to wait until we get home from our patrol at 5, okay? That's perfect. Uzume replied, relief on her face. It'll probably take that long to get Matsune's computer stuff packed up. I really appreciate this you guys, and I have information that you really have to hear. I got it from Sekirei number 00. This caught their attention. What? Uzume outlined what she had been told by number 00 the previous day. Oh, hell. Hibiki sighed in frustration. I can foresee a lot of frustrated nights ahead of us if this information is true. It does make sense though. Hikari admitted sourly, and I want to be strong enough to protect Minato-sama against anything and anyone who would go after him. Me as well. Hibiki admitted, but there is a loophole here. We may not be able to make love properly to Minato-sama, but we can service him and vice versa, so long as no actual penetration is involved. The lust-filled expression in her sister's eyes said a lot about what she thought of that idea. Uzume swallowed loudly as images of exactly what Hibiki was referring to danced through her head, making the already uncomfortable heat between her legs flare up even more. Right, I'll just be heading off to tell Matsune about you giving us permission. Yeah, Uzume muttered shakily as she tottered off towards Izumo on unsteady legs. Minato-sama is going to be rocked on his heels by gaining 2 new Sekirei without doing anything. Hikari said with a grin. True, but getting Uzume and number 2 on our side isn't anything to sneeze at. Hibiki pointed out, the single numbers are in a class all on their own. With at least one of them, Minato-sama is vastly more likely to make it to the final round of the Sekirei plan. I know. Hikari nodded. Now, let's start patrolling. The most likely area that potential Ashikabi would ambush Sekirei at would be at one of the drop-off points around the MBI building. Right. Hibiki nodded. Let's go then. The twins started walking again, not noticing the black-clad figure with silver hair following them from a discreet distance. Midday. Entrance hall, Minato's house. Where do you want this bed? The mover asked Minato. He and his fiend were lifting the box containing the king-size 4-poster bed, which was thankfully the last one to be delivered, thank heavens. Up the stairs, turn right and in the room at the end of the corridor. Minato told them. As the men humped the bed up the stairs, the raven-haired boy sighed in relief. This is the last delivery for today. He thought, we'll have to order a bed for Yushima-chan at some point, but that's for another day. Minato-sama. Yushima asked in concern, are you alright? Oh, yes. I'm fine, Yushima-chan. He assured his newest Sekirei. Organizing all of this isn't as easy as it looks. By the way, where's Musubi-chan? She went down into the basement to explore it. Yushima replied with a sigh, she seems incapable of remaining still. Musubi's just energetic. Minato smiled. She'll get bored fast down there, so she ought to be up in a moment. He then turned his attention back to the task he was doing before the bed was brought in, signing forms that said that yes, he had received the goods and yes, they were unbroken upon delivery. It was tedious work, but it had to be done. Annoying things. That's the bed in where you asked it to be put, sir. The man told him as he and his companion came down the stairs. Thanks for your work. Minato said with a smile and he passed the completed forms over to the spokesman. Here's the forms, all filled out. Ah. Thank you very much. The man nodded as he accepted the sheets and tucked them into a pocket. We'll be off now then. Have a nice day sir and please use our store again for your future furniture needs. The last part was said in a monotone, so Minato presumed it was boilerplate said at the completion of every delivery according to company policy, so the man was probably bored with having to say it. We will. Minato said and with that, the men left the house for the final time that day. People had been delivering things for the last 2 hours in a seeming unending stream of furniture. Fortunately, Musubi had restrained herself from doing something obvious with her strength, so, with Yoshima's hammer concealed in the basement, the secret of the Sekirei was secure. Speaking of which. With a sigh, Minato stood up and went to look for Musubi. He padded over to the entrance to the basement, located in the kitchen, and opened the door. Musubi-chan. He called down the stairs. Pausing, he heard the familiar sound of fists and feet flying in Akata. His grandfather had run a karate dojo back in Hokkaido and Minato had sat in awe as he watched the old man's feet and fist fly through the air as he ran through his karate kata, which matched this sound almost exactly, except this was a lot faster and stronger than what his grandfather did. Cautiously, Minato tiptoed down the stairs and peered into the gloom. Musubi was indeed running through a kata, her limbs something of a blur as she moved. That was amazing in and of itself, but what struck Minato most about his third Sekirei in that moment was the look of absolute concentration on her face. She was so totally focused on her kata that she was deaf to the world around her. The look in her eyes was of boundless determination, as if she had a goal to accomplish and nothing would stand in the way of her fulfilling it. As she didn't seem to be inclined to stop, and Minato knew from bitter experience that people who are interrupted in the middle of a kata get irritated, he settled down to wait for her to finish whatever kata set she was doing. Although she was wearing a pair of jeans and a t-shirt that he had bought for her the previous day, the restrictive clothing didn't seem to hamper her movement much, if at all. She moved with precision and grace, reminding Minato greatly of a naked blade, beautiful, elegant and deadly all at once. Abruptly, Musubi stopped her movement and exhaled slowly, her chest heaving at the exertion she had just put her body through, which told Minato that she had been doing this from almost the moment she had set foot in the basement. All finished, Musubi-chan? He asked quietly, making her leap in fright as she still hadn't noticed him. Minato-sama. She gasped, when did you? I've been here for, Minato checked his watch, almost 5 minutes now. You were so into your kata that you didn't notice or hear me, so I decided to wait for you to finish. I'm so sorry. Musubi bowed rapidly in distress, I didn't want you to see me like that so. Wait, like what? Minato interrupted with a frown. Musubi looked uncomfortable as she replied, all of the doctors and researchers at MBI said Musubi looks scary when I do my kata and I didn't want you to get scared of me, so I came down here to practice. Minato chuckled. Musubi-chan, my grandfather ran a karate dojo, so I'm more than used to seeing people perform kata, and while I'll grant that you can move a lot faster than my grandfather or his students, watching your kata wasn't scary for me in the least. Rather, I thought you looked beautiful and elegant while you were doing the kata, even more so than usual. Much to Minato's amusement and enjoyment, the fist-type Sekirei flushed redder than a tomato at his words, stuttering out something incomprehensible as she waved her hands in denial. It was really rather cute. Come on. The movers have left and we have to get the beds assembled for Hikari and Hibiki coming back. Minato chuckled. He gently grabbed her hand and led her up the stairs, making the busty brunette blush again. You'd expect a martial artist's hand to be rough, but her hand, it's so soft. Minato thought with a small blush of his own. He had never even had a girlfriend before now, in part thanks to Yukari's brother complex and in part due to his own lack of confidence, so all of a sudden having 4 wives pop up was a big shock for him, one he was still adjusting to, but he was more than slightly pleased by the change. He hoped Yukari didn't try anything stupid when she arrived, because the girls wouldn't sit back and take anything from her like all the others had. He had heard his mother tell Hikari and Hibiki to not hold back when dealing with her and so knew that if she did try something, Yukari would end up overpowered for the first time in her life. He really hoped it wouldn't come to that. A couple of hours later. With Uzume, Mia and Matsu. Matsu's secret room. Mia gazed sadly at the 2 Sekirei who were bustling about the small hidden room that Seo Kaoru had built at the request of Takehito to hide Matsu after she stole the Jinki. She had known that the 2 would move out as soon as she had seen the reactions they gave to Takami's son coming within a few meters of them for a few seconds. The 2 of them had barely been able to stand and had had to return to their rooms for relief, as she put it. Are you both absolutely certain that this is what you want? Mia asked them, once winged, you cannot return unless your Ashikabi rents a room here. We know Mia. Uzume replied firmly, and yes, we are sure. Besides, if we don't wing ourselves on him, we'll be driven mad by the constant arousal he causes whenever he goes past the inn. You have a point. Mia nodded reluctantly. Goodness knows, if they spent any more time in their rooms, they might as well not come out at all. Just promise that you'll keep what I told you yesterday in mind. Hi. Uzume rolled her eyes. No sex. Doesn't mean we can't have fun with our Ashikabi. And just what do you mean by that, Uzume-chan? Mia asked icily. Can't tell you, or you'd be obliged by your prudish nature to use that damned Hananya mask on me. Uzume replied, suffice to say, there are a lot of things men and women can do together that don't involve actual sex. That is licentious. Mia gasped. Such things had never occurred to her and Uzume was perfectly right. The act of penetration in the vaginal area and subsequent loss of innocence was what halted the growth of a Sekure's power. Any other sexual act wasn't even registered as far as a Sekure's power was concerned. No, it skirts the rules you've laid down for us. Matsu corrected, we can't have actual sex, but that doesn't mean that we can't give and receive pleasure from our Ashikabi. You're just upset that we found a way to have our cake and eat it too. Mia narrowed her eyes at Matsu, who merely stared back unflinchingly, which surprised the landlady. The Sekure of wisdom, number 2 Matsu, had never stood up to her, not when they had both been a part of the first generation of the disciplined squad and not since she had sought sanctuary here after stealing the Jinki. Kindly do not make me sound like some tyrant who delights in destroying your happiness. Mia said coolly, I am merely trying to make certain that your growth as a Sekure isn't interrupted. Once you have fully grown into your power, you are free to do as you please. Or so you say. Uzume stage whispered as she heaved a box full of Matsu's cheongsam dresses out of the room before Mia could whirl and glare at her. The lavender-haired woman sighed. Am I really that much of a tyrant? She whispered rhetorically, but Matsu heard her and answered her. In a manner of speaking, you are, Mia-tan. The oranget stated softly, you know the truth of what we Sekure are. You know more about us than even MBI does, yet you steadfastly refuse to say a word until and unless it becomes more than necessary. That is tyranny of one sort, Mia-tan. Knowledge is too precious to bandy about carelessly. Mia retorted. Knowledge is power, hide it well. Matsu scoffed. That hasn't worked all that well thus far, Mia-tan, or hadn't you noticed that a mad human is using us in a modern gladiatorial tournament? I would understand keeping it from MBI, but us. Your fellow Sekure. That smacks of extreme paranoia at its worst. Mia wanted to retort something at Matsu, but before she could, the orange-haired Sekure got back to packing up her many and varied computers so she could move. The landlady sighed and left the room, returning to the kitchen to prepare lunch, the last meal the three would share together as tenant and landlady. Oh Takehito, my love, have I truly become so wrapped up in my grief for you that I'm scaring away my fellow Sekure? Mia wondered as she chopped vegetables for a nabe stew. 5 p.m. Minato's house. When Minato answered the doorbell, he expected to see Hikari and Hibiki back from their patrol. They had rung him a few minutes ago to tell him they were on their way after successfully stopping several lowlife scumbags from forcibly winging Sekure that day. What he was faced with instead was a pair of girls he had never met before. One was a busty brunette who, although dressed casually in jeans and a t-shirt, was drop-dead gorgeous. Her brown hair was tied in a ponytail to one side of her head and her eyes sparkled with mischief. The other one was strange. Wearing a Chinese cheongsam-like dress, the woman also had her long orange hair done up in a pair of plaits down her back, as well as a pair of large glasses. The strangest thing about her was the fact that she had a green furoshiki tied around her head like some old man about to peep into the ladies' baths. Hello. He said uncertainly. Oh, hi. The brunette spoke up cheerfully. I take it Hikari and Hibiki haven't explained anything yet. They aren't back yet. Minato said with a frown. I take you two are also associated with MBI in the same manner that they are. This was Minato's way of confirming they were Sekure without outright asking. In other words, are we Sekirei? The brunette smiled. Yes we are. In a flash, both Musubi and Yushima stood behind Minato, fists and hammer raised ready to do battle at a moment's notice. Easy. The orangutan squeaked, we want him to wing us. We do. The brunette added earnestly. Easy girls. Minato stepped back and gently touched his two Sekirei on the small of their backs before drawing them in for a hug. I think these two are telling the truth. Come on in. We'll wait for the twins to get back and confirm your stories. Musubi and Yushima pouted as he let them go, but nodded and fell in behind him as he led the way to the living room, the two newcomers trailing behind them. Now then, Minato said as he sat down and drew his girls down to cuddle next to him, much to the slight jealousy of the two new Sekirei. I suppose an introduction is in order here. I'm Sahashi Minato, a one-year Ronin. The orangutan said as she removed her odd headgear. Academic performance, high aptitude and potential, but weak to exam conditions and pressure. Eldest child of Sahashi Takami, the head of the Sekirei clan. Has one younger sister with a strong brother complex. As a result has never had a girlfriend for longer than a week. You have winged 4 Sekirei thus far, numbers 11, 12, 84 and 88. That is a lot of information. Minato remarked neutrally. Very well, since it is obvious you know me, kindly introduce yourselves. I'm Uzume, number 10. The brunette said with a grin, people call me the veiled Sekirei, because I can control cloth. Whereas I am Matsu, number 2. The orangutan said, I am known as the Sekirei of wisdom and can interface with and control any computer system on the planet with the greatest of ease. A single number. Yushima yelped in shock. I'm the least physically impressive of the 9 single numbers, I assure you. Matsu said with a shrug, I can make MBI's satellite laser platforms bombard a building into dust, but I'm only slightly stronger and faster than the average human. Minato was rather impressed with the honest critique of her own skills and said so, making the single number flush like a schoolgirl. I have my own limits as well. Uzume sighed. My veils are useful for fighting in ambush and against those who don't use elemental attacks, but those like number 9, number 4 and number 3 water, edged weapons and wind are my natural enemies. Knowing your limits is a good thing. Minato said with a shrug, it'll allow you to work around them. Re-in GGG. Better get that. Minato said as he took out his phone and answered it, hello. Minato-sama. Hibiki's urgent voice sent a thrill up his spine as adrenaline started to pump through him on automatic. We're in trouble. Make it brief. Minato ordered in a faux calm voice. We are being pursued by Sekirei belonging to an Ashikabi who we prevented from winging an unwilling Sekirei, who is with us now. She answered quickly, there are 4 of them on our tail right now and they're gaining on us. Where are you now? Minato asked intently. Unbeknownst to him, his focused and intent voice and expression was making his Sekirei, both winged and unwinged, flush at how attractive this made him. After Hibiki gave their location to him, Minato nodded, I'll send backup. By the way, 2 Sekirei are here wanting me to wing them. They say they talked to you. Matsu and Uzume. Yes, we met them not long after we left home this morning. Hibiki replied, wing them. We gave them permission this morning. Got it. Keep safe, all 3 of you. Minato said, any idea who the pursuers belong to? The so-called Ashikabi of the South, Mikogami Hayato. Hibiki replied, please hurry with the reinforcements. See you soon. Minato said before hanging up and looking at Yushima and Musubi. The twins are being pursued by 4 Sekirei belonging to Mikogami Hayato. For an unwinged Sekirei the twins stopped him from winging against her will. The Ashikabi of the South. Matsu yelped. He has over a dozen Sekirei as of this morning. Musubi, Yushima, go and help Hibiki and Hikari. The raven-haired teen ordered, deactivate the pursuers if they refuse to back down and flee after you show up. Hi, Minato-sama. They replied immediately and stood at once to follow his orders. Uzume, this isn't the kind of situation I'd normally wing someone, but could you go and assist them if I wing you now? Minato asked. Uzume nodded. Of course. The southern and eastern Ashikabi are scum. It'll be a pleasure to help out against them. Well then. Minato went up to her and, after going over to her and cupping her face, kissed her on the mouth, eliciting a low moan from the woman. Pale cream wings burst from her back and moved to envelope them in an envelope before vanishing. Let my veil protect you from nightmares, my beloved Ashikabi, Uzume purred as she stood up. We had better change into our battle outfits, right girls? With a nod, Musubi and Yushima sped off to change their clothes. Keep an eye on Yushima-chan for me, Uzume-chan. Minato said to his newest Sekirei quietly once the subject of his conversation was out of range. She might have a bit of trauma from almost being forcibly winged yesterday. Gotcha. Uzume nodded before she picked up a bag Minato hadn't noticed she was carrying. Better get changed myself. You'd better wing Matsune now before she loses all her self-control. Indeed, the Oranget looked as if she would tear off Minato's clothes and start doing X-rated things to him if something wasn't done about her soon. Minato's sweat dropped. Yeah, I'll get right onto that. Enjoy, Matsune. Uzume sang as she strode from the room, an extra sway in her hips as she walked. Before Minato could move, Matsu leapt onto him and knocked him back onto the couch, pinning him down beneath an amorous Sekirei. Minato, she whined pleadingly, using the secret technique that all women seem to know and use on the men in their lives on an instinctive level, the dreaded puppy dog eyes that whittled away the resolve of men and undermined their determination. Ready to be my Sekirei, Matsu-chan? Minato asked softly as he smiled at her gently. I thought you'd never ask, the wisdom Sekirei said seductively before capturing his lips with hers, accompanied by her light orange wings flaring out to their full length. Matsu hummed contentedly once she broke the kiss. Let our combined wisdom teach the world for all of time. Enjoying yourself, Matsune? Uzume asked in amusement. She stood next to Musubi and Yushima, who were wearing their combat outfits. The veiled Sekirei wore very little. A pair of thigh-high boots encased her legs, while she wore a mini skirt and a white bikini top, all made of white cloth. Hovering over her head and wrapped around her arms was a long veil that seemed to flutter in a breeze that didn't exist. Very much so, Uzume-tan. Matsu purred, you should really head out and assist Hikari-tan and Hibiki-tan though. They'll meet you at the nearby construction site in 10 minutes. Minato informed his 3 combat Sekirei. It should only take you a couple of minutes to get there. Assist the twins and the unwinged Sekirei and bring them home alive. Hi, Minato-sama. The 3 of them chorused before heading out, leaving Matsu behind with Minato. It feels kinda wrong to stay behind while they go and fight. Minato sighed. In a way, you will be with them. Matsu told him, Uzume can invoke her Norito because you kissed her, and will be able to use it for the next 15 minutes. Besides, we Sekirei much prefer to keep you safe, Mina-tan. You do know what will happen to us if you die. Yeah, not a pleasant thought. Minato shivered, and a lot of pressure. Do you live nearby, by the way? Matsu nodded. Just down the road at the Izumo Inn. Need some help moving your stuff? He offered. Sensing he needed something to take his mind off the battle his Sekirei were going to fight, Matsu nodded. If you would be so kind. My computer stuff can wait until Uzume-tan and the others are back, but our clothes and stuff should be alright for you to move. Lead the way. Minato invited. Matsu led Minato out of the house, with him pausing to look in the direction that his Sekirei were heading for a moment and wishing them well. With Uzume and the reinforcements. So much power. Uzume said softly as she leapt from rooftop to rooftop, followed by Musubi and Yushima. The 3 Sekirei were rushing to the site that their Ashikabi told them to ambush the 4 Sekirei pursuing their fellow sister wives. Minato-sama's the strongest ever. Musubi called as they arrived at the construction site. The building, intended to be a block of apartments, was mostly just superstructure at this point, and the ground was covered in building materials, from concrete mixers to stacks of concrete blocks. The veiled Sekirei was willing to agree with her sister wife there. The amount of power she had flowing through her was intoxicating, filling her to the brim. She could almost feel Minato's presence with her, empowering and protecting her. I'll take the high ground with Yushima. Uzume directed, Musubi, you conceal yourself on the ground and ambush the 4 pursuing Sekirei once Hibiki, Hikari and the unwinged Sekirei pass by you. Yushima and I will attack after that. I'll use my Norito. If they're stupid enough to want to fight at such a disadvantage after that, we'll deactivate them all per Minato-sama's orders. Hi. Yushima nodded. Uzume-san. What do you know about this Ashikabi of the South person? Just Uzume is fine. The busty brunette said with a smile, before frowning, Mikogami Hayato. 17 years old. He's the heir to a vast fortune and is pretty much a hikikomori otaku. He forcibly wings Sekirei, although his first Sekirei, number 5, Mutsu, was an accidental winging. He treats his Sekirei like game pieces. The only Ashikabi worse than him is Higa of the East. Take your places now, that's them coming now. Musubi ducked behind some building equipment while Uzume and Yoshima leapt up into the partially constructed building and concealed themselves behind what few walls had been put up by the workmen. Then, the three Sekirei waited. They didn't have to wait long. The Raiden Futago leapt over the fence surrounding the building site, swiftly followed by a girl with short honey blonde hair. She was panting heavily and looking around wildly, like a wild animal that was being hunted. Why are we in a building site? She asked. No, demanded of the twins in a slightly hysterical voice. I thought you said we were going to your Ashikabi. This is part of the plan, number 54. Hibiki said calmingly. He sent 3 more Sekirei to help us. I'll bet they're here, waiting for the 4 morons to catch up. Calm down. Those bastards have been hunting me day and night for the last 2 days. The girl hissed back. I haven't slept in that long either. You try being calm after that. I hate to interrupt, but they're almost here. Hikari said urgently. The next moment, 4 thumps behind the 3 Sekirei indicated the arrival of the contingent of the Ashikabi of the South Sekirei. One carried a large double-handed blade like it was a dagger and wore a billowy kimono. 2 might have been twins, both with blonde hair in a twin-tail style, wearing a black Chinese-style dress that had a yellow stripe down the center. The only difference between the 2 was their weapons. One carried a long whip, while the other seemed to have threads dangling from her fingers. The last Sekirei had long gray hair and wore an elegant white dress that showed off her cleavage and her belly button. She seemed to be the leader and sent a smirk at the 3 her group had been pursuing. You've led us on quite the merry chase, number 54, but now we have you trapped. She called out cheerfully. Oh, are you sure about that? Hikari asked slowly. We aren't in the south anymore, this is the north. What of it? One of the 2 blondes barked irritably. There's no Ashikabi of the north. Hell, there are no Ashikabi in the north, point blank. That is where you were wrong, on both counts. Hibiki said with a wicked grin. Our master resides here and he is more than worthy to claim the northern sector as his own. Which he does, by the way, and he doesn't like poachers like you. Get him, girls. Hi! Musubi cried as she leapt over the wall and struck at the whip-wielding Sekirei with an axe drop. The blonde barely dodged the kick in time, allowing Musubi's foot to strike the concrete with a loud bang, creating a small crater where she struck. Holy! A power type! The girl cried. I'm here too. Yoshima snarled as she leapt towards the leader and struck down with her large hammer, but the string user intercepted her with a net she swiftly weaved from her threads. Even so, the wind pressure from the hammer user's strike knocked the gray-haired Sekirei back a couple of paces. An elemental weapon user. She said with a scowl. Still, we are only outnumbered by 1. You cannot wi. By the veil of my contract, my Ashikabi's nightmares will be dispelled. Uzume declared from her perch atop the building. Her veil started bulging and expanding until it enveloped the entire building site, blocking out the sun and creating numerous miniature veils from itself. Shit. Norito. The leader cursed. Mikafutsu no Kami. God of the jug and cloth capital. The veiled Sekirei declared coldly, this is your last chance to retreat. Continue to pursue number 54 and I promise you that you will never see your Ashikabi again. The leader cursed. This was not going to look go to her master when she got back to him. Fine. We'll leave. I am number 65, Taki and my master is the Ashikabi of the south, Mikogami Hayato. Who are you and who do you serve? I am number 10, Uzume, and I serve the Ashikabi of the north, Sahashi Minato. Uzume replied before motioning with her hand, creating an opening in her cloth enclosure. Leave through that. Never set foot in the north again. Taki gritted her teeth. She hated this. She hated that she was outmaneuvered like this. She hated the fact she had to bow to the other Sekirei's demands and, above all else, she hated the fact that she was going to be punished for something that wasn't her fault. She hated it all. Fall back, now. She ordered her 3 companions, who reluctantly obeyed while eyeing the Sekirei arrayed against them in addition to the fully deployed Norito ready to terminate them. This situation couldn't be won, so retreat was the only option, for now. As the last of the intruders fled Uzume's trap, the cloth sealed itself shut as if it had never existed. Uzume cocked her head to one side for a moment before relaxing and grinning victoriously. They've run with their tails between their legs. She reported to the others with glee. The Sekirei that had been pursued by the 4 southern Sekirei slumped to the ground and started crying in relief. Uzume took in a deep breath and the large dome of cloth started to shrink, retreating back to its creator until it was once more draped over the busty brunette's shoulders and arms. Hey, isn't it bigger than before? Hibiki asked curiously, as she mentally compared the veil's size to before Uzume had used her Norito. He, you guessed it. Uzume giggled. Every time I use my Norito, my veil's size grows by about a fourth, length and breadth. Takehito said that it was something unique to me because of the nature of my Norito. So, using your Norito doesn't just give you a power boost and a powerful attack, it also improves your primary weapon. Yushima asked in amazement, so lucky. Meh. It isn't that good. Uzume waved one gloved hand dismissively. I mean, how often am I going to use my Norito anyway? Not much until the second stage I'd say. Plus, once it gets to a certain size, it'll become unwieldy, so I'll have to cut it off once it gets to that size. Why not just split it in half and use 2 veils then? Hikari asked as she knelt next to the weeping Sekirei. Huh, never thought about it. Uzume mused before shrugging, it's worth a thought. Hey, you alright? Hikari asked the still crying Sekirei gently. Why yeah, I'm just bit exhausted is all. The honey blonde girl replied as she dashed her tears away angrily and stood up. I'd better introduce myself. I'm number 54, Karuz. I'm also known as the Trident Sekirei. Thanks for saving me from the Ashikabi of the South. No problem. Our master directed us to prevent any forced wingings that we came across. Hibiki replied, Yushima here was almost forced yesterday and our Ashikabi was, not pleased. Yushima whimpered a bit at the memory, prompting Uzume to give her a one-armed hug of comfort. Hang on, if you're the Trident Sekirei, where's your weapon? Hikari asked in confusion. Karuz reached out one hand and suddenly a trident as long as she was tall appeared in her grip from seemingly nowhere, much to the surprise of everyone else. I'm similar to Yushima-san over there. She explained, she can channel gravity, but only through her hammer. I can teleport objects, but only my tridents are able to be used for as targets for it. MBI keeps my weapons locked up in a strong room deep underground the MBI tower so no one can disarm me by destroying them. Wow, you must be pretty strong. Musubi said excitedly, why didn't you use your weapons against those 4? Number 65, Taki, is known as the Mist Sekirei. Karuz replied with a scowl, she can blanket any area she is in with a layer of ice-cold mist. I need to see where I'm going to teleport my tridents, so when I was ambushed by them for the first time, I couldn't fight back properly and had to run. So wait, you were ambushed by a Sekirei that had the exact skill needed to render half of your abilities useless. Uzume frowned, sounds like Mikogami's bought one of the Sekirei handlers at MBI. We'll have to tell Minato-sama when we return to him. Agreed. Hibiki said, Takami Okawa-sama will be furious when she hears about this as well. Wait, Takami-sensei is your Ashikabi's mother? Karuz asked in disbelief. Yep. She'll want to give you a once-over at some point, so do you want one of us to escort you to the nearest MBI hospital? Hikari asked. Could I, see if your Ashikabi-sama makes me react? Karuz asked shyly. I really want to be winged and safe from people like the Ashikabi of the South. On the condition that you only wing yourself on him if you are actually reacting to him. Uzume said sternly. She knew that the instinct to make herself safe from predators like the Ashikabi of the South would be strong in the Trident Sekirei at the moment. She didn't want her to make a rash decision based on fear that might take her away from the one she was destined to be with. Hi. Karuz nodded submissively, sensing how serious the veiled Sekirei was. Well, let's get going then. Hibiki said firmly, Minato-sama is probably worried about us. With that, the 6 Sekirei leapt out of the construction site and started roof hopping to where their Ashikabi was waiting for them. With Minato. And, that's the last one. Minato placed a box full of Matsu's computer-related stuff into the temporary storeroom that she had claimed for her stuff. The Wisdom Sekirei had been delighted when Minato had told her that she could choose any of the unclaimed rooms to use as her computer room. Minato had been rewarded with another kiss from the excitable girl before she started bustling around the rooms attempting to choose which one to pick. Contrary to her previous claim of being physically little different from a regular human, Matsu had picked up 2 PC tower units with little difficulty and carried them from her room in Izumo into Minato's house without looking slightly winded in the least. Matsu's landlady, Asama Miya, was very polite and acted like a complete Yamato Nadeshiko. Calm, composed, elegant and reserved. She was unreal. According to Matsu, once they returned to his house, Miya was a prude. The oranguet was glad to not have to be scared to death just for making a slightly off-color joke or forgetting to get dressed after a bath. Minato couldn't really see how Miya could be scary, but decided to take Matsu at her word and not do anything to piss the woman off. Never hurts to be on good terms with your neighbors, as his grandmother always said. Minato-sama. A familiar voice called, making his heart skip a beat in relief. They were all right. He hurried down the stairs with Matsu in tow and found his Sekirei relaxing in the living room. The Raiden Futogo were the first on their feet and glommed him almost as he walked through the door. Uzume and Yushima were relaxing on the couch, while Musubi was pouting as the first Sekirei got first dibs at greeting their Ashikabi. Hey! Minato said softly as he put an arm around each of the twins. Rough day. So many scum trying to force themselves on Sekirei, so many. Hikari mumbled as she breathed in the scent of her master, the scent that told her she was home. We clashed with 2 Sekirei from Higa of the East as well, but they had a subordinate Ashikabi who ordered them to fall back. Hikari added as she stepped back, I think he's one to watch for MMPPHH. She was interrupted by Minato kissing her on the lips, not that she was complaining. Her wings emerged from behind her and fluttered as she enjoyed her Ashikabi's attention. Wow, an unfamiliar voice said. Minato saw out of the corner of his eye a blonde-haired girl wearing a red dress, a short white jacket, a yellow belt, red fingerless gloves, black stockings and red ankle-high boots. She was also fidgeting in a very familiar way. I take it that this is the Sekirei you saved from Mikogami's Sekirei? He asked once he broke the kiss. Hi. Uzume replied for Hibiki, who was staring off into the distance with a silly look on her face. This is number 54, Kuru's, and the Trident Sekirei. She needs a place to crash since she's been chased around by Mikogami's Sekirei for 2 days straight. Determined, isn't he? Minato commented, Kuru-san, I know you are feeling the need to wing me right now, but please go and have a sleep before you decide to do anything. A decision as serious as this needs a clear mind to make the proper choice. Ah, thank you, Minato-sama. Kuru's flushed red as she replied to him. Matsu, could you set Kuru-san up with a futon in one of the spare rooms? He continued. On it, Mina-tan. Matsu nodded. Come with me, Kuru-tan. Let's get you settled. As she led the blonde girl out of the room, Matsu was willing to be that his other Sekirei were practically lining up for their turn at kissing him. Lucky, Kuru's mumbled, echoing the oranguet's thoughts. Minato-sama is being a bit too fair to you right now, I agree. Matsu told her as she led her up the stairs, but still, when you're winged tomorrow, it will all be worth it. You at least have it better than Uzume and I. We had to endure 2 days of holding ourselves back. We had to change our panties more than once, I can tell you. I can't believe that I can feel so much heat and not be on fire. Kuru's muttered, it's like he's cast a spell on me, on. She moaned and twitched as Matsu felt the distinctive shifting in the link between her and her new Ashikabi that signaled he was kissing one of her new sister wives. Better brace yourself, that's 2 down and 3 more to go. Matsu said sympathetically as she helped the poor girl into a room. Luckily enough for Kuru's, once her head hit the pillow, she was out like a light, although the Wisdom Sekirei was certain her dreams would be haunted by a certain raven-haired Ashikabi. I doubt that she'll be complaining though. She snickered. An hour later. The residence of Mikogami Hayato. So, let me see if I understand this correctly. A young boy with brown hair said calmly. He wore a white shirt, with white trousers and shoes and was seated on a computer chair that looked really expensive. Facing him was Taki, the leader of the Sekirei pursuit squad. She was looking apprehensive at what was happening. You've spent the last 2 days pursuing a single unwinged Sekirei, one of whom you knew the majority of her abilities and how to counter them. He listed as he looked his Sekirei in the eyes, yet she somehow evaded you for just under 48 hours by refusing to engage you at all. Now you say that she was rescued by Sekirei claiming to belong to the Ashikabi of the North. Is that an accurate summation of events, Taki? Hi, Mikogami-sama. The gray-haired woman replied with a great deal of trepidation. Mikogami looked at the black-clad man standing next to him. Mutsu, is she telling the truth? She is. Mutsu replied, making the nervous Sekirei slump slightly in relief. How troublesome. Mikogami said with a frown, and this number 10, you are certain that she used a Norito. It wasn't just a powerful attack. She used an incantation, Mikogami-sama. Taki replied instantly, there is no possible way for a Sekirei to disguise when we use our Norito, as we have to chant an incantation in order to use it after being kissed by our Ashikabi. In addition, the scale of the attack was not something that she could have accomplished without it being a Norito. Humph. The boy frowned. Mutsu, find out what you can about this Sahashi Minato fellow. If he's going to be messing with the game, I need to know how to put him down hard if need be. He's just ensuring you don't hunt in his area of the city, similar to how you do not allow others to hunt in the south. Mutsu pointed out, you can't really blame him if you do the exact same thing. There shouldn't be an Ashikabi in the north in the first place. Mikogami retorted to his first Sekirei. All you Sekirei seem petrified at the idea of going too far north for some reason. Even MBI steps lightly up there. That's because there's a Hananya up there, a really scary one. Mutsu replied seriously, if the Hananya of the north is roused to anger, even I would fall before her. Even the black Sekirei would fall before her. The only way that might work against the Hananya is to array all 108 Sekirei against her. Even then, I actually doubt that we would be able to do more than inconvenience her. Is this Hananya a Sekirei? Mikogami asked. Yes and no. Mutsu replied, she is both Sekirei number 1 and the pillar of the Sekirei, she who rules us. She is our beginning and our mother. Even so, we Sekirei do not know, even she does not know, exactly what she is. In game terms, she's a cheat code, one that has the probability of destroying the game completely. Mikogami, if you trust anything I say, trust me when I tell you to not do anything that could possibly bring her wrath down upon us. Mikogami was silent for a moment before nodding slowly. If you are going to go that far, I guess that I have no choice but to trust in your advice. Taki, inform all my Sekirei that the northern area of the new capital is out of bounds. You will not be punished for failing on this occasion. Arigato, Mikogami-sama. Taki bowed before beating a swift retreat while the going was good. Mutsu left in order to start his research about on Sahashi Minato, leaving Mikogami on his own, brooding about losing a new game piece. Later on. Sahashi Takami's office, MBI Tower. Shit. Takami snarled. She had just gotten off the phone to her son, who had informed her of the high probability that one or more of her handlers were in the employ of at least one of the 4 Ashikabi. The 4 Ashikabi were the most powerful Ashikabi, with multiple Sekirei under their command. Higa of the east, Sanada of the west, Mikogami of the south and now Minato of the north. These 4 Ashikabi were unofficially the rulers of the new capital, with MBI acting as moderator and disciplinarian. Yahan. She called. You called for me, Takami-sama. A tanned girl asked as she stepped out of the shadows to Takami's left. Stepping out of the shadows was not used figuratively when talking about this Sekirei. Number 57, Yahan, was the Sekirei of the shadows. She possessed the ability that MBI scientists referred to as shadow walking, allowing her to walk into a shadow in one place and walk out of another shadow elsewhere. The longest distance she could travel while unwinged was directly across the city, but in a fight, she could leap from shadow to shadow and take enemies down with her long curved dagger. Yahan was a tall girl with jet black hair and tanned skin. She wore a bikini top and bottom, over which she wore a hooded shawl, a sarong with a buckled belt, a collar and knee-high boots. Her foot-long dagger was sheathed at the small of her back within easy reach. All in black, of course. Yahan, my son has informed me that there is a strong possibility that some or all of our handlers are on the take. Takami told her, investigate their homes and finances and report back to me about any you find to have received a funds transfer from any registered Ashikabi. As you wish. Yahan nodded. If I am successful, will you allow your son to wing me? I can feel his power, even in the shadow world. What does his power feel like? Takami asked curiously, the scientist in her temporarily overriding the rest of her. The Ravenet shuddered in desire. He is strong, how any Sekirei cannot feel and respond to his power is a mystery to me. His power is intoxicating, enthralling and beguiling, not because of its quantity, but because of the kindness and honor he radiates along with it. If he wings 2 more Sekirei, I doubt I will be able to hold myself back from going to him without permission. Throughout this mini-rant, Takami found her eyebrows gradually rising in surprise. Yahan wasn't what one might call loquacious, preferring to convey her intent with as few words as possible, so for her to wax so poetic like this must mean that she was almost in heat for her son. I promise. Takami said with a nod. She liked Yahan and thought she'd make a nice daughter-in-law. Once this investigation is complete, I'll take you over to Min-chan and recommend you myself. Thank you, Takami-sama. Yahan replied gratefully, well, I'd better get going. The sooner these idiots are rounded up, the sooner I get my Ashikabi and sister wives. With that, she stepped back into the shadows and vanished as if she hadn't been there in the first place. Takami sighed in irritation. Seriously, these idiots thought that they wouldn't be caught by MBI for selling secrets. Even Minato wasn't that stupid, which was saying something. She stood up with a grunt. Now she had to do the final adjustments for the 2 Sekirei chosen to flesh out the discipline squad, numbers 104 and 105, Haihane and Benetsubasa, the blue and red Sekirei. Sahashi Minato's residence. Once he had kissed each of his wives, Minato sat down with the twins on either side of him and the rest of the Sekirei sitting in the other chairs and sofa, throwing jealous looks at the smug Raiden Fudigo cuddling up to their Ashikabi. She's out like a light, Mina-tan. Matsu reported as she sashayed back into the room, the poor girl'll be in a sleep coma for a day or so. Even Sekirei need their sleep. At least we stopped her from being forcibly winged, Minato-sama. Musubi pointed out. The fact that this Mikogami person is treating sentient beings like collectible dolls doesn't sit well with me. Minato said with a frown, knowing Ka-san, she'll have the person or persons responsible for selling him Kurusu-chan's information in jail as soon as she can. Matsu, you're a technopath, correct? Hi, Mina-tan. Matsu replied as she sat next to Musubi and Uzume. I can manipulate machines of any kind, but I am particularly strong with computers and databases. Can you hack into Mikogami's server and delete any information about Sekirei he hasn't winged? The raven-haired boy asked her. Once I have my computers fully set up, yes. The Oranget said confidently, unless it's a standalone server or on autistic mode, there isn't a server on the planet I can't crack. Not even the USA has a security system I can't crack. Good. The last thing we need is for him to chase other Sekirei around like he did with Kurusu. The Ashikabi said with a frown, I'm amazed that those 4 that you told me about weren't falling down in exhaustion themselves. Mikogami has 20 Sekirei, so he probably switched out the pursuers with other Sekirei, once Kurusu-chan was convinced that fighting was pointless, to let the first set get some sleep. Matsu theorized, then he swapped the original members back in sometime today for the final push. Sounds like him. Uzume said sourly, he tried to persuade me to be winged by him the first day after I left MBI. When I said no, his first Sekirei was sent after me. Number 5, Mutsu, also known as the Earthquake Sekirei. The guy didn't even try and he almost deactivated me with a single hit. This just made Minato's frown deepen. Uzume, I'd like you and Musubi to take over Hibiki and Hikari's patrolling duties tomorrow. If today's incidents are any indication, then prospective Ashikabi looking to forcibly wing unemerged Sekirei are likely going to increase rather than decrease. Got it. Uzume nodded grimly, ready to kick ass tomorrow, Musubi. Hi. The Miko look-alike said as she clenched her gloved fists. The raven-haired boy chuckled at his third Sekure's enthusiasm before becoming serious again. I have to ask, Matsu, how powerful an Ashikabi am I? The bespectacled Sekure of wisdom looked at her Ashikabi for a moment before answering. Very powerful. Your aura is intoxicating and attractive, Minato, and that was before you winged Uzume and me. Now it's even more powerful. Aura. Minato asked in confusion. All Sekure are, to a greater or lesser degree, psychic. Matsu explained, I'm a technopath, the twins use electrokinesis, Uzume manipulates her veil using a selective form of telekinesis, Kuruz uses teleportation, you get the picture. Even Yashima and Musubi use psychic powers of some sort in their abilities, Yashima to manipulate the gravimetric weight of her hammer and Musubi to improve her healing factor, a limited form of biomancy. With me so far. Minato nodded. Well, all Sekure have a couple of abilities other than their main power set. One is aura reading, the ability to taste the auras of the people around us. This is one way that helps us determine our Ashikabi, the other being physical attraction and preference. The other two abilities are something different entirely. They are both related to telepathy, but subtly different. One links us to our Ashikabi and sister wives, allowing us to sense new additions to the flock, so to speak, as well as monitor our Ashikabi's physical condition. The other one. At this, Matsu seemed to hesitate before plowing on determinedly. The last ability is the Ashikabi kill switch. It links our lives to yours, meaning when you die, we follow suit and deactivate permanently. All of us. At the same time. I knew about the last one. Minato said gently, Hikari and Hibiki told me about it. It's a lot of responsibility for me, I have to say, but Ka-san told me why it's necessary. I personally don't agree with it, but I can see why some people think it would be a necessity. I hope you can understand then why we want you to take a couple of us with you when you go out into the main areas of the capital, Minato-sama. The Oranget told him primly, adjusting her glasses aggressively. I do. Minato sighed. That's one reason why I took the twins off patrol duty, so they can come with me when I go and register for the exams tomorrow. Yashima-chan, that means you are on guard duty as I doubt Kuruz will be up to much until she's fully recovered and Matsu-chan admits herself that she isn't as physically capable as the rest of her sisters. Hi, Minato-sama. Yashima felt like bursting with pride at the trust he was putting in her. Protecting his home and those within it was a high honor indeed. She swore not to let him down. Now, I understand that there is another Ashikabi that is similar to Mikogami. Minato continued once Yashima calmed down. Higa Izumi. The Ashikabi of the East. Uzume spat, her voice dripping contempt, he despises Sekure, and treats us like we're tools. Every Sekure he wings is unwilling and the winging itself is a business contract to him. He's the heir to the largest rival conglomerate to MBI and doesn't hesitate to use underhanded or dirty tactics to get what he wants. Let me guess, he tried to force you after Mikogami did. Minato asked rhetorically. The furious look that Uzume had on her face said it all. In which case, please make certain to pay close attention to the eastern section of the city. The raven-haired boy said firmly, if we know he's done distasteful things in the past, it would be silly to not keep a close eye on the part of the city he controls. Minato, you should know that Higa also has a few subordinate Ashikabi under his control. Matsu warned him, among the Sekure that those Ashikabi possesses another technopath called Kocho, Sekure number 22. She is a pale imitation of me, only being able to access electronic machinery. Still, she is well versed in using them and will not hesitate to use a satellite laser to attack anyone going close to her Ashikabi. Noted. I take it you and she don't get along. Her Ashikabi asked. She's a cheap hack. Matsu ranted, she has no subtlety, just powering through firewalls with brute force. She is a disgrace to every technopath that I will ever give birth to. When Matsu's brain caught up with her words, she flushed red and let out a quiet, eep of embarrassment, much to the amusement of her sister wives. Minato had actually flushed red at that as well, making the Sekure giggle at him too. Ahem, so, does Matsu's comment mean that any child a Sekure has will inherit their mother's ability? Minato inquired once the giggling faded out. It's more of a theory than anything else, as no Sekirei has ever given birth before that we know of. Hibiki said with a flush of her own, unless a male Sekirei and a female Sekirei have a child together, it is generally accepted that any children a female Sekirei has will either possess their mother's power, or a subset derived from that power. Taking my sister and myself as examples, any children we have are likely to inherit our powers or, failing that, a power derived from it, such as electromagnetism. Minato considered this and found it to be a logical hypothesis. What about an all-Sekirei pairing? The scientists at MBI refer to that hypothetical child as a purebred Sekirei. Matsu corrected him, a demeaning name, but essentially accurate. The theory is that the child would either inherit one or other of the parents' powers or, if the powers are compatible enough, meld them into a totally new ability. The thing is, there are so few male Sekirei that it is improbable at best and impossible at worst that many Sekirei pairings will be formed. Hikari added, for another, any Sekirei will be inclined to be with their Ashikabi rather than another Sekirei unless ordered to do otherwise by their Ashikabi. Minato frowned at the thought of an Ashikabi being heartless enough to order two of their Sekirei to do that and ignore their feelings. He shook his head as he dismissed the notion. Right then. I think that now would be a good time for dinner. He said with a clap of his hands. Any requests? Curry rice. Musubi chirped. Anyone want something different? Minato asked. Seeing no one demurred with Musubi's request, he stood up and asked Musubi, want to help cook? Hi. The bubbly girl replied enthusiastically. Okay then. Uzume, could you set the table? Gotcha. The brunette nodded. Later. Office, the home of a MBI handler. Johan stepped out of the shadow cast by the closed curtains of the room and looked around. The room was neat to the point of being obsessive-compulsive. Every book on the bookcases was organized in strict order of color, every pen on the desk was lined up with regimental precision, and if there was a mote of dust larger than a mustard seed in the room, the Sekirei of Shadows would be very much surprised. Overly neat places like this are a sign of a diseased mind. She muttered, now, where would I hide proof that I betrayed MBI if I was a greedy OCD egomaniac son of a bitch? After checking through the folders in the filing cabinet, under B, bribes, F, financial and MBI, she booted up the PC and swiftly hacked into it. Really? Using his first name as a password. Please. Aha. There you are. Johan muttered after a moment of searching. Arrogant prick keeps a diary. X day, X month, X year, was approached by Mikogami Hayato for information on various Sekirei. He was very specific on the types of Sekirei he wished to acquire information on. They had to be unique, in both appearance and ability. I think the little brat is treating the Sekirei plan as if it were an excuse to collect rare Sekirei like they were figurines. Whatever. MBI doesn't pay me enough to warrant my total loyalty, so what the hell? I do need a new car. After all, the first to go should be that smug Trident Sekirei. Never liked her, sick bastard. She quickly copied the entirety of the man's diary, as well as the meticulously kept financial records he had on his computer. Why he had both paper copies and electronic copies in the same room was a mystery to her, onto a flash drive before shutting the computer down and leaping into a shadow, vanishing from the room with nary a trace she had been there. The realm of shadows was pitch black and only Johan could navigate through it. One time, she had brought an MBI scientist with her into the realm and he had been unable to see anything, even with an industrial-grade torch. Time had no meaning here, so she didn't bother running. As she strode along, she mentally catalogued the handlers she had investigated that evening. MBI employed 40 handlers of various ages and both genders. Of them, Johan had investigated the male ones first and, surprise, surprise, they were all involved in various nasty schemes. A couple embezzled their budget, a handful had sold information to various governments and a few had sold information on various Sekirei to either Higa Azuma or Mikogami Hayato. Not that a few of the female handlers were going to get off without being investigated. Johan knew for a fact that the handler and adjuster of number 9 had mentally scarred her with ludicrous and salacious tales of what she would be expected to do for her Ashikabi. Perverted old woman. Each shadow was manifested in the realm of shadows as a large black arc. Johan knew how to navigate from shadow to shadow with pure instinct, but recently, she had been drawn to various shadows that she knew were near one Sahashi Minato. It was, as she had told his mother earlier today, very difficult for her to not go to him and wing herself on him, but she endured through sheer willpower. Soon, Minato-sama, soon, she whispered to the portal that would let her emerge from her future Ashikabi's shadow, before moving along and stepping through the portal that emerged in Takami's office. The gray-haired woman was back behind her desk and giving a lecture to a small pinkett sekirei with red fingerless combat gloves and a gray-haired sekirei with tiger claw gauntlets, both wearing the uniform of the disciplined squad. Ah, Yahan. Finished already? Takami asked. I have investigated all of the male handlers and discovered that almost all of them have done things to earn them a dismissal, Takami-sama. She replied, here are my findings. She held out the flash drive that she had stored all of the data she had gathered. Takami took it with a nod. I did discover the identity of the person who sold Kurusu's information to Mikogami Hayato. His name is Hyobu Akaji. Yahan added. Well done. Takami nodded before turning to the two sekirei in front of her desk. Haihane, Benetsubasa, your first job as members of the disciplined squad is to locate Hyobu Akaji and put him in one of the cells on the 25th floor for interrogation tomorrow, by Karasuba. The three sekirei had to wince at that. The black sekirei was a sadist of the worst kind, especially when it came to humans. Akaji would spill his guts as soon as he knew who would interrogate him. On it, Takami. Benetsubasa nodded. Haihane, let's go. Yeah, Haihane yawned. That last adjustment took it out of me. Wanna sleep. Tough shit. The pinkett barked back and, snagging her partner by the arm, started to drag her out of the room. Come on. Aren't they the entertaining pair? Yahan observed as the door slammed after the duo left the room. They aren't my first choice for the disciplined squad, I'll admit. Takami sighed. Karasuba wanted number 88 on the squad, but Musubi-chan didn't want to be on the disciplined squad, so Karasuba got Benetsubasa and Haihane instead. Manaka. Yahan shook her head at the antics of the man who was in charge of MBI. Anyway, when do you think you'll be finished with your investigation on the handlers? Takami asked. This time tomorrow at the latest. Yahan replied confidently. Good to hear. We'll be going over to Min-chan's for dinner and I'll introduce you. Takami smiled at the gleam that appeared in the eyes of the sekirei of shadows at this. I will ask that you make yourself available for the occasional job for MBI if needed. It will never be something that will be directed against Min-chan, so rest easy there. If Minato-sama agrees to it, I will do so. Yahan replied. Already so loyal to him when you aren't winged. My, Minato will be a lucky boy when he has you as a wife. Takami teased her. The ravenet flushed at that. Just as I will be lucky to have a husband as kind as Minato-sama. She shot back. Touché. Takami grinned. Now, off to bed with you. You don't want to greet Min-chan with bags under your eyes, do you? No. Yahan yelped in fright. I'm going. With a single step, the shadow sekirei vanished from the room, leaving Takami cackling to herself at how her family was growing. The next day, morning. Minato's house. Minato woke up to find that, once again, he was surrounded by all of his sekirei, with the addition of Uzume and Matsu. He could say that it was uncomfortable, but that would just be a lie. The only problem was trying to get up without disturbing the bevy of beauties that were his wives. Extricating himself took a bit of time and not a little effort, not to mention self-control, but he managed it eventually. Padding down to the kitchen after his morning ablutions and getting dressed, he walked in on Kuruse having a drink of milk. Morning Kuruse-chan. He said casually. Eep. Kurusu almost spilled her drink in her shock. She managed to recover just in time, her superhuman reflexes helping her out, no doubt. Glad to see you're up. Minato said with a smile. Did you get enough sleep? Why yes, thank you. Kuruse stammered. Are your sekirei all right? They're all fine. He reassured her. Hikari and Hibiki are strong, the same goes for the others. Do you want some breakfast? I can't imagine that you'll have eaten much on the run. Now that why you mention it, I am pretty hungry. The blonde admitted. Figured as much. Minato grinned, one Sekirei-sized portion of breakfast, coming up. By the time Minato had served up a large breakfast to the almost salivating Kurusu, the rest of Minato's Sekirei were up and about, except Uzume, who seemed determined to stay in bed as long as was possible. I've been meaning to ask, Minato-sama, but where did you learn how to cook? Hibiki asked as she ate. Oh, my grandmother tried to teach my sister and me how to cook when we were little. Minato replied. Yukari could burn anything she chose to. I was a bit better, so Oba-chan continued to teach me. I took it up as a hobby once I was old enough. It's relaxing, strangely enough, although my sister keeps teasing me about it. Brat, grumbled the twins. They were not looking forward to having the younger Sahashi living in their home and disrupting their new life with their Ashikabi. She can be. Minato agreed as he sat down and served himself a human-sized helping. She's a tomboy, but gets very irked when you suggest that she isn't feminine, which she can be, when she isn't beating up people with karate. Yushima frowned. Are you sure we should let your sister live here? She sounds like a pain. You try saying that to Ka-san, see how far you'll get with her. Minato replied sourly. Standing up to her is not easy between her own martial arts skills and her very forceful personality. It gets worse with Yukari there and even more impossible if my grandmother is there too. It took 6 months for me to get up the courage to tell them I was coming to the new capital for university and boy, were they angry. Why? Uzume asked. Well, they weren't so much angry as they were in denial that I was actually standing up to them. Minato replied with a shrug, I'm not the kind of person to make waves unless it's really important, so most of the time, I just went along with what my family wanted without complaint. Of course, now I have a family of my own, no more meek Minato. This last part prompted smiles to emerge from all of his Sekirei. Kuru's was especially flushed and had started to pant in an all-too-familiar way. Minato-sama, wing the girl already. Hikari said with a wave, she wants it and I know you aren't one to say no if a Sekirei reacts to you. Kindly don't make me sound like a person with loose morals. Minato objected dully, is that what you want, Kuru's-chan? To be winged by me? Hi, the blonde said, her eyes glazed over even as she turned to face him unerringly. Then who am I to say no? Minato smiled. With a squeak of excitement, Kuru stood up and threw herself into Minato's welcoming arms before eagerly placing her lips over his. Pale yellow wings emerged from her back and spread out across the room. All of Minato's other Sekirei felt the feeling of a new bond snap into place between their Ashikabi and the Trident Sekirei, swiftly followed by the feeling of contentment from Kuru's that was the common after effect of being kissed by Minato. My Ashikabi, now and forever. The blonde Sekirei almost purred as she luxuriated in his arms once the kiss was over. Welcome to the family, Kuru's-chan. Minato chuckled, now go and have another lie down. I doubt you've fully recovered from your chase yesterday. Ka-san's coming over for dinner tonight, so she'll check you over after that. As you wish, Minato-sama. Kuru said with a smile, I'll look forward to seeing you at dinner then. With a spring in her step, the Trident Sekirei headed out the door and back up to her room. Well, she's a happy camper. Hibiki said with a chuckle. TCH, and you weren't when you were winged. Matsu scoffed at her. Shut up. The Ravenet Sekirei muttered. An hour and a half later. Shinto Tito University Building Admissions Department. Name. The board receptionist asked in a monotone. She was obviously just coming up on the end of her shift and wanted to be done with him as soon as possible. Sahashi Minato. You wish to confirm your participation in the exams. The question was asked with such mechanical formality that Minato was tempted to see if she was actually flesh and blood or a clockwork construct. Yes. He replied to her instead of what he had imagined, here's my ID. A frown crossed her face after she entered his information, 1 year Ronin. I broke my writing hand the day before the exam last year. Minato explained. Partying no doubt. The woman snorted. No, a disagreement with my former landlord that got out of hand. Minato said testily. He hated it when people assumed that just because he was a college-age boy, he went out and got drunk all the time. He actually disliked alcohol, both the taste and the fact he was a maudlin drunk. Fine. You have been registered for the exam. Please show up at the exam location at this time in 4 days' time. The woman, obviously not believing him a jot, said as she handed him a slip of paper, along with his ID. Thanks. Minato said shortly. He turned and left the room, being immediately joined by the Raiden Futogo, who had waited outside the room. All sorted, Minato-sama? Hibiki asked. Yeah. The lady behind the counter was a pain in the ass though. The boy grumbled before he brightened up. Well, let's go get some lunch. It'll be a date. Blushing, the twins followed him to a nearby restaurant that catered to the students of the university who didn't like the food served in the cafeteria, a not uncommon occurrence. It was reasonably priced without being tacky and it wasn't a beef bowl stand, so it was good enough for the three of them. They spent the time chatting and getting to know each other properly. The bond between Sekirei and Ashikabi was all very fine and dandy, but they still had to get to know each other as individual people. As they were finishing up and leaving, a blast of wind sent them staggering as it struck them. What was that? Hikari asked in irritation as her hair was mussed up. A Sekirei, although I'm not certain which one. Her sister replied with a frown. Number 3 is the Sekirei of the wind, but several physical-type Sekirei are strong enough to cause that kind of displacement of atmosphere from their strikes as well, like Musubi. Watch it, ya cow-breasted stripper priestess. A loud female voice bellowed from up the street. The three looked at each other and facepalmed before running that way. Damn it, what's she done now? Hikari grumbled. I don't think Musubi would deliberately start trouble, Hikari. Minato countered, especially not with Uzume as her teammate. The Ravenet Sekirei grumbled at that, but fell silent as they approached the area that the unknown female voice had come from, an intersection. Standing in the middle of the street was a girl dressed in a black dress with matching black gloves and carrying an ornate scythe in one hand. Next to her were an irked Uzume and a sheepish Musubi. Oh great. Number 43, Yomi, the Death Scythe Sekirei. Hibiki groaned, just what I didn't need. Who are they? Minato asked as he gestured at the three Sekirei standing opposite his two Sekirei and Yomi. One had short black messy hair and was dressed in black shorts, a white vest and black leggings and gloves. One had pigtails and wore a long-sleeved Miko dress and the last had blonde hair and wore trousers that only had one leg, a bikini-like top and a red collar around her neck. Clasped in both of her hands were numerous whips. The one with short black hair is number 85, Oshino, the boxing Sekirei. Hibiki replied. The other two are number 40, Shi, the hidden blade Sekirei and number 62, Kai, the whip Sekirei. Matsu told me last night that they're all Sekirei winged by Higa Izumi, the Ashikabi of the East. Minato-sama. Musubi called excitedly as she spotted them, ignoring the scolding she was getting from Yomi. Minato-sama. Yomi parroted before looking over her shoulder at Minato, so he's your Ashikabi. Huh. The dismissive snort of the other Sekirei made the twins glare at her, only to be interrupted by Kai. Oi! Stop ignoring us, damn it! The blonde Sekirei yelled, and who's the spindly kid? Last time I checked, it was considered common courtesy to give your own name before asking the name of others. Minato stated as he walked over to Uzume and gave her a peck on the cheek before returning his attention to the three eastern Sekirei. But, as I already know who you three are, I suppose we can ignore it. I am Sahashi Minato, the Ashikabi of the north, with 4 of my Sekirei. There is no northern Ashikabi. She protested nervously. As of yesterday, that is incorrect. Minato countered, and I disapprove of both poaching and forcing other Sekirei to be winged against their wills. Leave and you will not be deactivated. Behind him and to his sides, his Sekirei glared menacingly at the three aggressors until they flinched. Outnumbered and with the opposing Ashikabi present to empower his Sekirei with their Norito, there was only one course of action they could take. Fall back. Kai ground out. But if we do that, Higa-sama will. Oshino whimpered. I know. Kai shot back, but we don't have a lot of choice here. With glares that promised dire retribution, the three leapt away and vanished among the buildings surrounding the area. Well, that was a thing. Yomi remarked as she turned to scrutinize Minato carefully, the scythe in her hands twitching slightly as she spoke. So what now? Are you injured? Minato asked. No tilde. The girl replied slowly. In which case we don't have to take you to an MBI hospital. Minato said with a friendly nod, Good luck finding your true Ashikabi. Uzume, Musubi. Good job. No problem. Uzume grinned, this is only the second time we've interfered. The town's really quiet. You two must have really stomped the scum down yesterday. Hikari made a dismissive gesture. TCH. More than a few were cowards who ran at a little spark directed at their groin. The only serious problems were the Sekirei from the Ashikabi of the south. So he's likely to try and force me as well? Yomi asked with a frown. Yep. Out of the 4 Ashikabi, east and south are trash. Hibiki stated with disgust. Sanada of the west is laid back and is seemingly a nice guy, but he isn't interested in winning any more Sekirei. We've made it clear to Mikogami not to come to the north, so if you head up there you'll be safe from him at least. But not from Higa. Yomi grumbled. She then looked at Minato thoughtfully. No. Minato said firmly, seeing where her thoughts were going, I only wing Sekirei who react to me. I don't force Sekirei and I don't let Sekirei force me. The death scythe Sekirei pouted prettily at that before a devious smile emerged on her face. She bowed slightly to Minato before saying, Minato-sama, I hereby request refuge in the north under your aegis until such time that I find my true Ashikabi. Judging by the glares that she was receiving from the girls around him, minus Musubi, Minato could tell that Yomi wasn't very popular with her fellow Sekirei and that they dearly wanted him to say no to her request. Unfortunately for them, Minato's innate sense of honor was bashing him over the head and would not take no for an answer. She had been attacked before and would no doubt be sought after by Higa, even if she hid in the north. If she didn't, no doubt Mikogami, Higa or another forceful Ashikabi would try something with her. There really was no choice. I grant you refuge, Yomi. He sighed, do no harm to me and mine and you may stay until you discover your true Ashikabi. Great. 2 perverted Sekirei under the same roof. Hibiki muttered, Matsu and Yomi. Terrific.